Hello, is anyone there? It says there's an admin person. Is that you, Emily?
So, so who started it? Oh, funny. It's funny because it doesn't show doesn't show who it says that I'm the host. Oh, weird. This is so weird. All right. Well, I am the host. I'm giving you screen sharing. So I'm going to have you share your screen so that you can actually run the presentation as you want it. Is that okay? Oh. Hi, everybody.
Good morning, Emily. Good morning.
Morning, Cindy.
Hi.
Morning, folks. This is Jeff. Can you hear me?
Hey, Jeff.
You're Jeff.
Hey, Allison. Hey, everyone. Good. Okay, I'll disappear so you don't have to look at my Ted Kaczynski haircut. It's hard finding a barber these days, I tell you.
I know I cut all 3 of my kids' hair last night. Didn't go very well at all.
I cut my boyfriend's hair last night, and I had the little clippers, and I accidentally did this all the way back, just straight line. I'll send you a picture, Allison.
I know. I'll send you pictures of my kids. Like one has a bowl cut. Like it's not good.
Oh man,
That's so funny. So Emily, I only see one picture, and that's the person who's talking. Is that right?
so you can go in at the bottom of your screen. You should be able to manage how you see everybody. So there's a participants option where you can pull up a participants list on the right side of the screen.
Oh, I found it. Mine is up on the top left, which is weird, but I got it now. Okay.
Okay, so can you see multiple?
Now I see 7 people.
Perfect. Are you also seeing everybody's pictures on your main screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I like Christy's background.
I know mine's my messy kitchen. So
Yep. It's fun getting to see everybody's houses during this time.
very good. So I like the haircut stories. I learned how to cut my kids' hair when I was young, and it was a lifesaver, let me tell you. It was something that's come very helpful over the years.
Well, I'm not sure that my boyfriend's gonna let me do it again.
Well, I've snipped people's ears before, and nobody likes that either.
He told me I needed to stop laughing while I was cutting his hair because it was making him super nervous.
Yep. Yep.
Good morning, everybody. So glad to see everybody's faces. I will get my lighting situation here. I haven't ordered the studio lighting yet.
Yeah, you have to turn around and face your window, then it lights it up.
Yeah, but I don't want you to see everything else in this room. Let's see, maybe I could do one of these things.
Maybe as part of our introductions this morning, we should tell everyone which room we're
Moving around in.
There you go. There's this lady on PBS that has a plate on the wall behind her, and it looks like my grandfather's old Spanish stuff. And I keep looking at the plate and I forget to listen to what she's saying.
Oh.
This is the best it gets for now.
Thank you for coming to our meeting a couple weeks ago, Stacy. That was really great.
Oh, happy to help.
Yeah.
All right, looks like everybody's logging in. We'll do a bit of a roll call to my best ability here. Oh, it's so good to see everybody's names and faces.
Looks like we had
Beards.
37 total invites. We should have somewhere between 30 and 35 attendees showing up on here. Right now we have 22.
Okay, well, why don't we go ahead and get started? Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Caldwell, Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, and I'm so grateful that everybody joined us today. If nothing else, but to see your beautiful faces and remember that we're part of this interconnected community of people who want only the best for our region. And so thank you. Housing is not necessarily top of mind these days or top of news, but it wasn't even a month ago where it was the top of the news. What I'd love to do is invite you to introduce yourself, remind us of what organization you're with, not just the living room, what your role is, and maybe throw in, mom of 3 dogs or whatever else you're juggling as you try and persevere through a regular work schedule, if that's even normal anymore. And we'll get through those, and then I'll walk us through the agenda. And I'm going to just use the participant list, and sometimes it flips around. So when we get to the end, I apologize if you can just shout out if I missed you. So Sue, good morning.
Good morning. I don't know how I hit the top left quadrant here, but I did on mine anyway. I'm with North Tahoe Public Utility District, and so working with the North Lake Tahoe area. Recent life has had my brother-in-law be diagnosed with cancer. So trying to sequester and the COVID and deal with his doctor appointments and such has been very challenging, but we're still staying healthy so far. So.
Glad to hear it. Thank you, Sue. Hardy.
Hi, good morning. Hardy Bullock, I'm with the Airport District and also Supervisor-elect for District 5 for Nevada County. And it's been an interesting time at the airport and the county both. Airport's really slow and the county's really busy, so I'm learning on both fronts there. Getting used to being in front of this laptop all day, and it's been a change. But my senior in high school and my junior in high school were definitely needing a lot of my attention. And it's sad to say that many of the activities that other senior kids get to experience, obviously my kids aren't going through, but they're going to go to college anyway and try and get out of here and start the next chapter. Although that's actually unknown right now on the colleges that they're going to, what's going to happen with housing and when the colleges are going to start. So we're sorting through all of that, and I wish everybody on this call well, and hopefully you're taking time to protect your spiritual fitness during this time of transition.
Emily, good morning. Emily, good morning.
Yep, sorry, I've got two screens going. Good morning, everybody. Emily Vitus, project coordinator with the Mountain Housing Council, and as of Monday, the new executive director for the Truckee Tahoe Workforce Housing Agency, also known as the JPA. So interesting to start something new like this from home. I'm definitely missing the social connection and missing just like walking into coffee bar and seeing all of your faces and seeing friends. So looking forward to reconnecting with everybody in a social setting when all of this kind of blows over.
Thank you, Emily. Good morning, Supervisor Gustafson.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Agree with missing seeing people in person and being able to really engage. This is certainly a lot of time sitting in my kitchen looking at a laptop these days. But we're getting through it. Placer County is extremely busy. There's nonstop calls trying to provide for social services and economic thoughts of how we might recover. But on a good note, we're doing a lot of Zoom happy hours with a lot of friends from across the country and family. So that really is helping. There's a good purpose in these Zoom calls too.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see all your faces. I'm Allison Schwedner. I'm with the Community Collaborative, which is a program of the Community Foundation. And yeah, likewise, a really, really busy time for our collaborative partners who have just been getting hammered these last few weeks with so much community need. So lots of problem solving, lots of time talking with partners, lots of time just trying to figure out how to move things forward. And I'm at home with my 3 kids, and my husband had to run down to Reno this morning to pick up some things from his office. So I apologize if I have to hop off here and there just to kind of get them some food. And there's a couple kids who are having some school challenges. So, but yeah, it's great to be part of this meeting. So thank you.
Good morning, Christy.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, this has been a very crazy time for CAT Contractors Association has done not a whole lot right now, just sort of hunkering down. But my company, MWA, we're going full bore working from home. There's 21 of us all working from home now, and it's kind of insane having a lot of Zoom meetings. just trying to keep everybody going during our busiest time of the year. Spring's, we're trying to get ready for all the hopeful construction starts. And it's been intense.
We are hopeful as well on those construction starts. Thank you, Christy. Chris.
Hi, good morning, everybody. This is Chris Mertens. I'm the North Lake Tahoe liaison for the California Tahoe Conservancy. Doing as well as we can be here. We just adopted a 5-month-old puppy, so that's busy.
Love it. What a great time to train a puppy. Good morning, Stephanie. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. How's that?
Perfect.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Stephanie Olivieri, representing the Downtown Merchants Association with Cassie Hubble. And I'm speaking to you today from the beautiful Jackass Ridge Ranch in Truckee. And I'm doing most of my work from here for Cabonas, but I do go into the office once in a while. There's no one on the street, no one in the building. So it's a good work atmosphere as well. Trying to get a lot of exercise at all possible, and there's always something to do, so I'm not a bit bored. I'm sure no one else is either. Thanks for including me.
Good to see you. Take care. Jasmine, where'd she go? I just saw Jasmine. Did she drop off?
No, I'm here.
Jerusha.
Jasmine's here.
Oh, there you
morning.
are. It just switched. Good morning.
Good morning. Jasmine Bro with Health and Human Services for Eastern Placer in Nevada County. And I would say I would echo Allison's challenge in managing all of the new requests and new challenges and constantly problem solving. But we have a great group of partners, and it's been wonderful to problem solve with really great people.
Thank you, Jasmine. We'll go back to Jerusha.
Good morning, everyone. Let's see. I'm working off my phone and computer because my computer actually does not have a camera, so it's a little interesting. We're doing fine. I'm with North Star California. We've had some rapid changes here, and honestly, we're happy that we had employee housing. It's been really helpful to our seasonal employees right now. And it's really been helpful in getting through this difficult time. On a personal note, I'm sort of with Hardy. I've got the teenager scene going on. It's just been a challenge. It's a challenge keeping them home and not socializing. So that's something we're continually working on. I'm really glad the snow's melting so I can get out in my garden. That's kind of my happy place. But other than that, happy to be here. Thanks for having this meeting. And I'm only going to be able to be on for the first hour, but I look forward to hearing everyone's updates.
Fantastic. Thank you. Good morning, Brett.
Good morning, everyone. Brett Williams with North Lake Tahoe Resort Association and also Agate Bay Realty. I've been keeping myself busy. Cross-country skiing, trying to collaborate with the county as far as how our businesses and counties are going to be aligned, not only during the crisis, but after the crisis. And so far, almost all the things that we've done, I feel pretty great about. On a personal note, I have 2 teenagers, so that was challenging going into COVID, much less now. And I guess I also think that Carol Baskin killed her husband. Tiger King.
I was a little bit worried about what you were confessing there, Brett. Thank you, Brett. Good morning, David.
Good morning. You're talking David Tierman?
Yes, David Tierman.
Hi, Stacy. Good morning, everybody. Good to see everybody, and good to be on this call. David Tierman, Truckee Town Council, and also day job with JMA Ventures. Council-wise, we've got a virtual council meeting coming up April 14 at 4:30 p.m. I'm sure Jeff will talk more about that. So looking forward to that. And then day job, keeping me plenty busy, both with on the planning front, with a project at Homewood, and also project management wise here in Truckee. Yeah, and then just during the day, we have a golden retriever at home. Our two daughters are long past college and on their own at this point, and they happen to be together sheltering up in Sitka, Alaska right now. So that's pretty cool, and we get to see them almost daily through this kind of technology. So and then my wife Lorna works at Tahoe Forest Hospital District, and she happens to be charged with the big task of organizing the community mask making effort. And so hundreds and hundreds of masks have been made in our community, and they're being delivered to the hospital district. And so quite an effort on that front. So fun to see that happening as well. So that's it for me.
I love it. Thank you, David. And thanks to your wife for organizing that. I leave it to the United States to make fashion statements out of these masks. I'm really super excited about that we're elevating it from the white, hospital looking.
Right.
So anyway, thank you. Good morning, Scott.
Hi, good morning, Stacy and everybody. I'm Scott Keith Design Group, and helping with communication design for various nonprofits, including Mountain Housing Council. I'd say mostly I'm keeping busy with my groups of clients, which are a lot of companies that need help shifting or improving their online sales for products or delivery, some here in town. And then also a lot of nonprofits, we're spending extra time with planning and strategies, like how do we keep working if our products or if our services aren't appropriate to be asking for funding right now? How do we shift? And then at home, I've got 3 kids at home, and we've got 3 different levels of online learning going on at any one time: college, elementary school. One of my daughters is an elementary school student teacher right now here in Truckee, and she's helping with 3rd graders doing online learning. And then I have a middle schooler as well. So everything's different every day, but it's certainly been exciting.
Thank you, Scott. Sure. Good morning, Emily.
Good morning. Just working from home here with my 2 dogs and trying to get outside and enjoy the sunshine as much as possible, and run after work or get a little skinning in and hanging in there.
Good. Glad to see it. Thank you, Emily. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Romack, and I work for Supervisor Cindy Gustafson. So I've been busy with her, supporting her efforts and informing the community and doing everything else that we're doing. So that's kept me busy during the day. And then personally, I'm 28 weeks pregnant. So I've been working on creating a human and trying to stay healthy during this interesting time.
Congratulations, Lindsay. We're so happy to have more children in our community. 100%.
Thank you.
Single-handedly growing our community. I love it. And congratulations to your mom, who is running the Sierra Senior Services. She did a fantastic job on the interview yesterday for 101.5. I really encourage everybody to go and listen to that. It was wonderful, of all of our different nonprofits talking about what they're doing. Thank you, Lindsay. Good morning, Brittany.
Good morning, everyone. Brittany Benesy. I'm the Government and Community Affairs Director for Sierra Business Council. We have had quite the time adjusting to this new normal. Certainly our Small Business Development Center has been heavily involved. So we've really been focusing on how our government affairs team can best support them with everything coming out from the federal and state levels, while still tracking the priorities that we identified in January. So it's been interesting. Things are changing quickly.
We really appreciate what you guys are doing. Thank you. Karen, good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Karen Fink, I'm the housing coordinator at the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency. At home, I have a teenage son who's in 10th grade. He's pretty self-monitoring, so that's good, but it's just kind of interesting trying to understand how much schooling is actually happening. And then my husband works at a natural food store, so that's pretty exciting to have him, and a little nerve-wracking to have him be on the front lines. But we also have good access to toilet paper right when it comes in. It's also really great. And then at TRPA, our current planning department, used the first couple weeks of the COVID-19 crisis to get a lot of our permitting system online. So that's really great for the current situation. And then also moving forward, I think that'll be a good asset for the community.
That's great. Thank you so much, Karen. Good morning, Heidi, by a beautiful sunny window.
I know. Hi there, everybody. Good morning. This is Heidi Alstead with the Martis Fund. Good to see all of your faces. In terms of, the Martis Fund, we've been helping to support some rental assistance funds and emergency housing funds on the ground, and pretty exciting. And in terms of home, I have a teenager at home who's doing online school. We're on spring break this week in Incline. Who knew? We are still having spring break, but things are going very well. So lucky she's a good kid and gets her work done. So thanks.
Thank you, Heidi. Good morning, Supervisor Anderson.
Good morning, Stacy, and good morning, colleagues. The county, as Cindy noted with Placer, is extraordinarily busy right now, trying to deal with containing the spread of COVID-19. We've been mobilizing our Health and Human Services Agency. We've opened our Emergency Operations Center. Developed a number of task forces that are in alignment with state task forces, and it's a challenging time for all of us. And I very much appreciate the collaborative approach that we're developing, not just here in Eastern Nevada County, but across the county, in terms of working with agencies across the county line, working with other agencies within our county jurisdiction. It's a trying time, but also a time where we're learning how best to deal with situations like this, and it's moving forward. With regard to home life, I'm here in the international headquarters of California Fly Fisher Magazine, getting ready to trying to figure out how to publish the next issue, going to press at the end of the month, so there's the personal challenge of keeping a business in operation during these trying times, as well as, of course, serving our constituents. And there's some interesting news on the county level. I learned a couple of days ago that there is no Western Nevada County Community Foundation, which shocked me given the size of that part of the county. And I suspect Stacy may have some news. I mean, I won't release it, but Stacy may want to say something during her COVID-19 update that's coming up later on this morning.
That's good. Thank you. So good to see you, Richard. Good morning, Yumi.
Good morning. This is Yumi with the Town of Truckee Planning Department. I'm fortunate to be, like most of you, working from home. We were able to transition pretty quickly to working at home. And I feel like I'm just as effective at home as I am at work, even though I miss my coworkers. And we are just as busy. We have applications coming in constantly, and we're still keeping busy. It seems like the development community out there still wants to move forward and are optimistic. So, and at home, I'm spending time in the office with my husband all day. We have not yet killed each other. We're pretty happy together. And we have an 8-month-old puppy that is taking up all our time and getting us outside.
I love it. Thank you, Yumi. Good morning, Alexis.
Good morning.
So it's good to see everyone's face. It feels like eons ago since we had public meetings. MAP is doing well. We were small, so we were able to quickly move and start working remotely. I think the difficult thing for us is that we had to postpone one of our largest fundraisers for this month, the Wild and Scenic Film Festival, which is a three-part event now that we have expanded it. So we're shifting and adapting. We'll be announcing on Monday doing our first virtual event. So excited and nervous about all of that, trying to be hip and adapt as quick as we can to this virtual world that we're living in, and then also just really trying to figure out what does this mean for the face of advocacy and fundraising and outreach and events. And so I can tell you all that I'm in the process of wading through that and trying to figure out how, as a small environmental advocacy organization, we adapt. So that's all been fun and exciting, and I've done more webinars than I'd ever like to do in my life in the last 3 weeks. And then I also have a 22-month-old at home, so that has been another added challenge. And then I hear you, Yumi. I also am sharing my workspace with my husband, so we're trying to dance around each other as lightly as we can. So I think this is just going to make us stronger.
That's right. Thank you. Good morning, Jeff.
Oh, good morning. Thank you. Nice to see everyone. I'll be real brief on the town COVID stuff because I think later on the agenda, you're probably going to want to hear about that. I will say that if you want to know all the things the town has been doing in the last couple of weeks, there's a good video we just put up a day and a half ago about COVID. And then I wrote a couple-page letter trying to sort of go through the litany. So there's too many things to talk about here. But of course, it's a day later, so now everything's different. And I think that's the strange lesson of this thing is we've learned you get a PhD in emergency preparedness just about every day. But we're doing fine. Town hall essential services, just to cut to the chase, are happening. Roads were plowed, as you know. Patrol cars are out there. Everybody else is working at home, like Yumi. I'm in and out of the office. The office is now kind of a good, clean sanctuary because there's 2 of us there in a building made for 150. So it's pretty quiet at times. So we're doing fine. I'll have a chance to talk about specific things or anything anyone wants to hear about in terms of, some of the actual programs or policies later on. But thanks for doing this.
Appreciate you being here and spending your time with us. And same goes for all of our town staff and county staff and supervisors. We know how busy you are, and I just want to take a moment and acknowledge that you've prioritized this conversation. So thank you. Julia.
Good morning, Julia Tolan with the Truckee North Tahoe Transportation Management Association. We also have had a lot going on. Our executive director, her last day was the day that the shelter-in-place order was put into place. So I've been solo since then, and there are a lot of happenings with public transportation, just trying to keep it going, but also having the challenges of lower ridership, of course, and then also with a lot of issues with drivers and them being scared, with rightfully so. And then also we have an airport shuttle, which is pretty challenged right now. And so we're working through some stuff with that also. On a personal level, I have a 15-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. So that's been very interesting, trying to work at home also while corralling and what many of you are doing. So, and my husband is considered an essential employee, so he's been mostly at work. So it's definitely a learning curve, but we're getting through it, all of it.
Julia, that does sound challenging, and you're very strong, and we really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Frederick Stevens. You're on mute, so I can't hear you grumping at me.
Let me work at that, Stacy.
Uh-huh.
Now you can hear me. And Christy Thompson, I'm impressed you have the only custom background. I opted out for the Golden Gate Bridge. Rick Stevens, Truckee Tahoe Airport District. Very quiet, as Hardy said. Sequestering at home, although Gail and I did have our 52nd wedding anniversary last Monday.
Congratulations.
And I want to report that she hasn't killed me yet, as opposed to me killing her, because who else would put up with me?
This is being recorded. Stop that.
Okay. And so it's really kind of quiet here. The only good news is I have a 2-year supply of red wine. So
I'll be over this afternoon. Thank
well,
you.
I think that's a distancing problem. I'll make sure the gate won't let you in.
Just leave it at the mailbox at the end of the drive.
That's it.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Okay, now this is where it gets a little challenging for me because I scrolled screens. Let's see. I see Teresa going by the name of Hunter. And you're on mute. There we go.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I'm sorry, that's my husband's last name. It's my incognito name. So at Sierra Community House, we have the 60 of us, mostly working from home, providing services virtually, except for those that can't be provided virtually. So to echo Allison and Jasmine, definitely super busy with just managing a lot of new requests. Our food requests have roughly doubled over the last few weeks. And so we have adapted what that looks like in terms of getting the folks in our community who need food, the food that they need without putting anybody at additional risk by doing a drop and go. We're still operating our Safe House. We are helping community members navigate a lot of new programs and a lot of concern and fear and anxiety. We're getting requests for rental assistance and all different types of assistance. But I'm really feeling grateful for just the outpouring of support that has come from our community, from volunteers, from donors, from funders, including the town and Martis Fund. Thank you guys so much for mobilizing so quickly, and the Community Foundation. Just feeling really grateful for how much our community has rallied around. And my husband and I have a 1-year-old and a 6-year-old at home. And so we are in just sort of a constant state of role confusion. You know, am I the deputy executive director of Sierra Community House, or am I mommy? And both all the time. So I'm also just want to say how grateful I am for this group and for the Community Collaborative and for the fact that our organizations merged before this happened, because there was so much trust that has been built up that allows us to actually do this in a meaningful way now without not knowing who all these faces are. So I'm really grateful to know so many of these faces. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. And just to underscore the impact of these existing collaborations across the region beyond the jurisdictional lines to build that relationship trust and that relationship muscle in a way that helps us do things faster. Change happens at the speed of trust, somebody said once. And so I'm really grateful as well. Okay, moving on. Jennifer Merchant, good morning. Oh, you're on mute, Jennifer.
Sorry, I was hitting my space bar. Usually that works. I don't know why it wasn't. So I think Cindy covered a lot of the things that we are doing at Placer County. I've been spending a lot of my days working on internal issues with human resources and staffing, and trying to work with my department to plan how people do work from home, and identifying people who aren't working because they're not essential employees but may be available to work elsewhere in our community and provide other services that our community needs. And it's been really busy. Spent a lot of time on conference calls, some Zoom meetings, some not. So it is nice to see everybody's face today. At home, my partner Dave already works from home, so he has dibs on the home office. And right now I am sharing our dining room table with my daughter, who is back from Berkeley Law School. and is taking all of her classes online. So I'm also getting an interesting legal education as I sit here and do my other work for Placer County. And we're trying to keep other things afloat too. I mean, housing is still at the forefront. We're focusing on that work and trying to keep it moving forward, because I think what we know is that when we come out of this, we're still going to need a lot of these initiatives that we're working on. They're priorities for us before this, and they're going to be greater needs as this moves forward. So staying on top of working on some programs and initiatives related to housing and related to economic development, and things that are important to the community, like fireworks on the 4th of July. Hope they can happen. So that's what we're busy doing at the county and at my house in Tahoe Vista.
Thank you, Jennifer. Good to see you. Okay, let me see. Sean Barclay, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm on 4 different devices here right now.
I see that.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you guys. Sean Barclay, General Manager of the Tahoe City Public Utility District. I am in the office today, so I apologize. I'm providing on-site supervision. There's only, as Jeff mentioned, there's only 2 of us here in the building. So, but we do have staff, essential staff out in the fields, making sure everybody's sewer and water services are going as normal.
Thank you.
So trying to get ready for a board meeting. My board docs are due here shortly in the new world of board meetings. So trying to navigate how to do that effectively. And, you know, echoing what a lot of people are saying, we're scrambling continuously to try to keep up with all the HR stuff that's going on, making sure we're trying to keep our staff healthy and safe so that we can continue to provide the essential services that we do. And trying to navigate all of that while also being a dad to 3 kids. I have a high schooler, a middle schooler, and an elementary schooler at home. And so splitting my time here in the office and at home, trying to help my wife, who thankfully carries the load at home for the most part. So that's it.
Thank you, Sean. Good to see you. What a sight for sore eyes, Mr. Fred Eelfeld. Good to see you.
Well, good morning. I'm Fred Eelfeld, Squaw Valley Public Service District, and I've been absent from these meetings for about a year. That was a bit because of a shuffle on our board, and Eric Colson was representing us to the Mountain Housing Council. So I am back at this point, and I'm happy to be back. I really believe in what we're doing. And I want to get reacquainted with some of the progress we've made and get some updates on this. I'm sharing my home with my wife, Barbara. They're just the 2 of us, but we have 5 children and 15 grandchildren. So virtually we're pretty busy keeping up with everybody. And I get out cross-country skiing and snowshoeing, and we're so lucky to live in this beautiful place. I really love that. Let me give you a brief update about our district, because we have essential services that we need to provide. We have water and sewer for Squaw Valley, and we have 2 shifts going so that if somebody gets sick, we can make accommodations. And in terms of our fire department, which is our other activity, we have our 3 standard shifts. And again, they're being very, very careful with their PPE and with their connecting with people. And so far, no one has tested positive for COVID. Our administrative staff is working from home, as are so many other administrative staffs. And so that's where Squaw Valley Public Service District is. One thing I'd like to hear, Stacy, I know that we're the MHC 2.0, and I'd like to hear where we stand in terms of members and participants.
You got it. Okay, let me see. I'm back in another screen. Andrea. I may have missed that. Let me skip to Steve and make sure I have the right name. Good morning, Steve Frisch.
Good morning, Stacy. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, as you might guess, the Sierra Business Council has been pretty busy. A big shout out to our entire Small Business Development Center staff who pivoted on a dime, dramatically expanded their capacity, and are taking 70 to 80 calls a day now from small businesses and helping them. We're beginning to focus some of our attention at Sierra Business Council to what's next and the process to get businesses reopened after the shelter-in-place orders are lifted, which I think is going to be quite a challenge in our community and very important to the housing issue, because there's nothing like a job to make housing affordable. And we have continued to focus on the government affairs side, and we have an update on that coming up a little bit later. And, you know, I watching what's happened at the town level and the county level and the regional level, I am reminded that resilience, like the ability to work together, collaboration, understanding, is, you know, that social capital is the definition of resilience. We often think of resilience as natural, but the reality is it is the ability of people to work together to overcome adversity that creates resilience in a community. And I'm just so impressed with how the Truckee community has stepped up, and to all of you who have stepped up. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Listen, I'm currently on a Zoom, a Mountain Housing Council meeting.
Okay, good to know.
Any updates that I can tell them regarding our
Hey,
involvement?
Richard, can you mute your line? Thank you. Anne, I'm sorry I called you Andrea. You've got a floor, and I just tried to, sorry about that. So Anne, how are you today? Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ann Flora Dwyer. I'm doing well. I transitioned my my relatively new architecture firm back home. I had just gotten an office a few months ago. So that transition has been relatively seamless. Other than I now have my two kids, 5-year-old and 2-year-old, at home. The 5-year-old who's in kindergarten, and trying to keep up with that program. And my husband, who isn't working right now, so is thankfully able to help even more with the kids and allow me to focus on work. We also got a new puppy last week. She's 3 months old, in addition to everything else we got going on. But it's been a good distraction and helping us get outside a little bit more. And then also in any spare time I have with all that, been trying to make masks and dropping them off with Lorna to try and to help where I can with those efforts as well.
Thank you, Anne. Appreciate it. Okay, I'm looking for Jeff with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. Is he on the line? Okay. Are there any other Mountain Housing Council partner representatives that I have missed? And I will address public in just a second. Please unmute yourself if I've missed a partner.
Hi, Stacy. This is Chase Gendron with Tahoe Prosperity Center.
Good morning, Chase.
Good morning. We've been quite busy on the South Shore. Some of the projects we've been working on, one is assisting the Warm Room, our homeless shelter down here. You know, in a time like this where sheltering in place is something that's so important, it's hard to do when you don't have some place to shelter. Their capacity was 24 beds. They had no showers. So we were able to secure 10 motel rooms that we can quarantine people as needed. And I got a temporary contract with the rec center. So the capacity has now gone from 24 to 40, not including the 10 extra rooms. Plus they have showers available. So big improvement there, and we're happy to have been able to help with that. We have of course we cover the region. So we have our website we built out has got basin-wide resources divided for businesses, for individuals, and by county and state. So that's something that we've been working on. And then lastly, we've got on a personal note, I have a 3-year-old and 6-year-old daughters that have somehow morphed from 2 of the sweetest, easiest kids to gremlins that have gotten too wet. So we kind of juggle that at the home. But otherwise, we're all.
Thank you so much. Any other Housing Council partners that have not introduced themselves?
Hi, Stacy. Tom Murphy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry, I don't have video, having IT issues with the computer. My challenge here has been distance learning. I have a 13 and 15-year-old that have taken over the computers, and so I'm not quite sure why it's not working. So my apologies to all. But I'm here with Martis Fund, and I just wanted to introduce myself and say how much I appreciate how the community has come together and all of you making the time. It's part of the reason we live here and the glue that holds us together. So look forward to hearing what the updates are.
Thank you so much. Any other partners that haven't introduced themselves or connected with us? Very good. Okay. Well, with that, for those of you who are joining us as a public member, we will have public comments in this agenda, and that'll give us a chance to also know who else is on the line. And I appreciate everybody indulging a round of checking in and touch base and reminding everybody who we are, even if we've got somebody else's office or our kitchen behind us. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share a screen here, and I will just let you know that 3 weeks ago, I had never logged on to Zoom. And now it is like the old Ben clock. Every hour on the hour, I'm leaving a meeting and entering in a new meeting on Zoom. It's so just like you. So let's just be patient with each other. Emily is working the controls for us today. And so you will be automatically muted. Please comment through the chat box. It's easier for us to see what kind of questions, or if you have a comment that you want to make. It's easier than bouncing back and forth between the participants with a hand up. And you can also type questions there. So this morning we've got the following on our agenda. We're going to just kind of give you a window into what we know the state of housing is. We're going to move into council updates so that we can hear everything going on in our partners' world, first related to housing, and then we'll go into COVID. We'll have time for public comments and we'll close. We'll just keep plowing through. If you need to take a bio break or go work with your kids for a moment, please just do that. We understand you're juggling personal and professional lives simultaneously. But today we want to give you an update on where we are with 1.0. We want to also do the same on 2.0. We want to talk about what's happening at the state level with policy. I'm very excited about the work that Sierra Business Council has been focused on. And then we'll take some time to do a general COVID-19 report out, where I know many of you might be anxious or excited to hear for the first time some real frontline information, not only from TTCF, but from our partners who many of them represent that frontline workforce. So with that, I will also share, we made the transition at TTCF to go virtual almost 4 weeks ago. And we have really pivoted our operations and resources to really respond to this and raise money. We'll tell you more about that. Personally, I have 3 teenage boys, 14 and 16-year-old are at Truckee High. And my 19-year-old came home from New York right at the very beginning of all of this. He was in college his first year. And so now we're back as a family of 5, and they are growing teenagers, much like locusts in our kitchen. And so trying to keep up with the food needs of 3 growing teenage boys has been quite a priority. And I do not have an office like Jennifer. My husband works from home, and so this is his office, and he was gracious enough to share. Otherwise, I'm usually sitting on a pink couch or in my kitchen. So with that, let's talk about where we're at with housing, and also acknowledge that we've got some key players that have been part of Mountain Housing Council for some time who are transitioning or have already transitioned away. And so you are seeing me facilitate today for the first time without Shauna. I miss her, but I'm glad that she's where she's at the town. She's doing amazing work, and the town is taking some big strides to keep focused on housing. And you heard earlier that Emily Vitus has transitioned into her new role with the JPA. And I couldn't be more proud of her, and delighted that she's been able to extend her time with us to help me kind of shut down phase 1 or 1.0 of Mountain Housing Council as we gear up for what 2.0 looks like. And so take heart, there will be new people in place as we make this transition. You won't always see me as the facilitator, but this is what you got for now. So with that, on the housing front, one of the things you will notice is we haven't had a chance to update the placemat and dashboard. And I can't tell you, the whole team was really disappointed because that has been a steady over the last 3 years. But with the relying on our partners, primarily the jurisdictions and the public agencies who are doing so much of the heavy lift around the policy work and the housing approvals, it just seemed a little tone deaf to be asking for those updates. So we plan to get them here, and we do plan to create a final kind of 1.0 dashboard for you and your organizations. So our frontline staff and our work on housing thus far has really been in the framework of community response around the COVID-19. So really focusing on shelter and trying to make sure that those homeless individuals and those who are in the most vulnerable populations are in a safe place and have the ability to shelter in place. And so there's been a lot of work with the Emergency Warming Center. There's been a lot of work among our partners that you'll hear about later on a day respite center at the Veterans Hall. And then there's been work, and again, thanks to our partners on the lakeside, to create some solutions with our lodging partners to open up rooms for those who are either homeless or homeless and testing positive. So that, from the TTCF vantage point, has been kind of the primary focus, is really thinking through our most vulnerable populations and what housing looks like right this moment. And with that, I would like to, if she's not teaching class for her children, invite Allison to fill in any gaps on that front for us as it relates to our focus lately on housing.
Sorry, I just cut the tail end. We're having a little fraction division challenge. So I was helping Ben with his teacher. Could you put that on mute, honey? Sorry.
Do you want me to come back to you, Allison? Do you want to?
No, that's okay. Yeah, no, I just heard the end. Yeah, I mean, as far as housing our most vulnerable folks, yeah, it's just been an ongoing challenge. And I know Jasmine's on the phone as well, and she's been doing a ton of troubleshooting around that. So I don't know if this is the right time for Jasmine to kind of fill in the blanks.
Sure.
Okay, Jasmine, are you there?
I sure am.
Thank you.
Okay. So we've been doing a lot of work around this issue, and we've had a really wonderful partnership with both Nevada and Placer County and the town of Truckee, Emergency Warming Center, and the Parks and Rec Division. And we have been able to secure a new location and expanded drop-in hours for our Emergency Warming Center. So services are happening 5 days a week for 4 hours a day at the Veterans Hall. and it's fully staffed with our emergency warming center, homeless outreach team members, and we're providing hot showers, a place for people to come in out of the cold and just kind of regroup, get a meal, check in with people, get some case management, get some connection to services. So that will be, we have that site until the end of April. And then depending on where we are with all of the COVID needs, we will be reevaluating with the team to see if that's something that will be continued.
Thank you, Jasmine. Okay. Now then, what I'd love to do, and I think what might be helpful is if we use the chat to queue up the council updates on housing. We'd love to hear from you how housing has been front and center, or even just kind of steady as she goes over the last quarter in your organizations. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out, I don't know if I have to stop sharing.
Stacey, I'll watch chat. So if partners just want to comment, Placer County or your name, I'll just select you and each of you can kind of go in order so we don't have people trying to talk over each other.
Thank you, Emily. Does anybody want to talk about any rental assistance? Does anybody want to talk about any projects that are underway? Any policies related to short-term rentals? Any of that would be relevant here.
This is Jeff from Town of Truckee. I can do ours.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know how to use the chat thing yet. I keep hitting the button and nothing's happening. So, hey, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, if I cut out, I apologize. Just move on. My computer seems to kick in out every so often, but and I don't know that if Shauna Doherty is on. She was going to be, but I haven't heard back from her. I don't think she is. So I'll do a one quick story, and I think it's a good one. Business does go on. We've been doing all things COVID, but also the people who are working on day to day, like Shauna, the business continues in the background and remotely. And I'll give you one feel-good story. And it's not just feel-good, it is a good story. And the framing of the story is it's about Frischman Hollow 2, which I think many of you know about. It's a 68-unit affordable project, mostly low income, some moderate income, that the Pacific communities, which is Andrea Clark and Caleb Root, have been working on. And, there's all this legitimate concern that it takes a long time to get housing through. It takes a long time to get projects through. Development is tough, especially in the town of Truckee. I think this is a story that tells a very different story when things fall into place and everybody's doing their part. Their application was originally submitted in May of 2019. It will be built this summer. So less than a year from initial idea to sticks in the ground. And just to give you a couple of senses, the Planning Commission review was simultaneous with the building permit review, which all happened in the same month, which never happens. We took a risk, they took a risk, and it's all working out. They got their tax credit money just the other day, and it's another good little story about that. They actually got denied, put on a wait list. They emailed Andy Morris, our attorney, and said, Andy, what can we do? Andy and I wrote a letter. Actually, Andy wrote it, but I got to sign it. And in 3 hours, they changed their mind and gave them their tax credits. To give you a sense of, why did this project work when others maybe take longer or are more challenging, I'll just give you these points, and I'm going to kind of read them because, first of all, the developer came in with an absolute clear understanding of our general plan, our zoning, the site, the fees, how to work with town. They'd done it before. They knew the site because, of course, they had developed Frischman 1. And they proposed a project that was more or less in accordance with all of those things, and that's huge. Secondly, they incorporated staff suggestions without 2 months or 6 months of back and forth and battling. It's like, those are good ideas. We can do that. Similarly, when it went to the Planning Commission, there were some interesting ideas presented, and they were able to literally on the spot at the podium agree, disagree, and work through some suggestions of Planning Commission. They submitted an incredibly competitive proposal to the town because we actually had to sell them the land. It's still in process technically, but it was town property, and it is moving into their hands. They took some huge risks. They actually ordered their modular units before they had approvals. If they didn't get approvals, they were stuck with lots of modular units being built at very high cost that they would have had to put somewhere else or do something else with. They took that risk because modular units are in short supply and they needed to get in the line to get those modular units. They had all their financing in place, and that may be the most important thing to say to sort of the development community. They came in with every piece of financing, understood, either agreed to, or in the tax credit case, well on the way, and with a solid application into the state. Because they are who they are, they know so much about the state criteria and the state rules and the state competitive processes. They were able to help the town when we needed help to help them in terms of letters, in terms of putting applications together. And similarly, we were able to help them, as I described earlier, with the tax credits. So all of that came into place and is pretty awesome. So there's an example of a project that can go from sort of, I won't say nothing, but a kind of a, dirt to what we hope will be modulars, again, COVID notwithstanding this summer. So that's, I think, a good story. Assuming Shauna is not on, and I'm going to pause for a moment. Is she still not on? I think she was.
I haven't seen her on here, Jeff. I texted her, but hadn't heard back yet. So I'm hoping she'll be able to join us in a bit.
Jeff, are you frozen up? It's a little eerie when one of your colleagues just doesn't move at all. Okay, he did encourage us to move on. We will make time for him and Shauna when they join us. Who else would like to jump in on a partner update as it relates to housing?
Let's do Platt. We have Placer next and then Nevada.
Thank you, Emily.
Great. Hi, everyone. Cindy Gustafson again. I'm going to run through this, but of course, it's our incredible staff at Placer County that are making all these things happen. And I'm happy to join the call and report, but they can answer any questions. I think Jennifer, Emily, and Lindsay are all on the line. What a phenomenal time, like Jeff said, that while some of us are off dealing with policy and a lot of unprecedented changes we need to make in operations, our staff are still accomplishing incredible things in housing. We are continuing to work on that workforce housing deed restriction program, similar to Vail Indeed's program. We hope to roll that out this summer, bringing it back to the board. I think the board had asked for that in 90 days, and we're hopeful that we'll start to see an outline of that and be able to roll something out on that. We're also continuing to work with TRPA on the Tahoe Basin Area Plan amendments for ADUs. With the changes in California law and TRPA being a bi-state agency, we have to finesse some of the work on our area plans as well as with our other jurisdictions. Right now we have a two-step process on ADUs, and I think the other jurisdictions in the basin are following our lead, Placer's lead on that. But hopefully making some headway there on how we look at ADUs within the Tahoe Basin that aren't currently subject to California state law. We're also working with the California Tahoe Conservancy on lands for affordable housing. I had a call yesterday with Patrick Wright and Chris Mertens. They are looking at another parcel to hopefully bring forward at our June Conservancy Board meeting in Kings Beach, but there's some issues to work out there. It may take a little bit longer to get that one done, but really focusing on how we can take this opportunity to look at state lands for affordable housing projects. Our CEDRA department is wide open for business. We had already started to roll out e-services online, and this time, unfortunately, is been a real test of how that can help with continuity of construction projects and housing projects. We have an Ask Placer chat box with a open counter fee estimator and e-permits, and a lot of folks are using those services. So we're happy that we already had it in place and we're able to really expand it during this period. The Resource Center for ADUs, I think Shauna Purvines had mentioned that. She is working on rolling out those services as they become available. That's going to have a new web portal, dedicated staff to assist with the process, an inspiration book on how to do ADUs, pre-approved plans, how-to webpage and workbook, cost calculator, fee calculator, and a rent calculator and return on investment calculator. So really trying to assist in getting ADUs up and running as quickly as possible. And then working with potential lenders to develop ADU funding opportunities, and also preparing a contractors list. So we have a temporary web page up. I won't try to give you this long, but I'll put it in the chat box if anybody's interested in looking at that temporary page. We're excited to say that Schaefer's Mill, Meadowview Place, is moving forward. We do expect to break ground on that project this summer. Really exciting to see that one go with incredible tax credit financing and all the efforts people have put in to help with that. Also on Dollar Creek Crossing, as most everyone knows, we took a little bit of a step back to hopefully speed this up moving forward, and have staff is still working on responding to the public comments on traffic and pet and bike safety, and also a feasibility study for maybe how we modify the site and use it in a couple different manners to encourage density in some areas and maybe some other types of housing projects, including maybe opening up some for co-housing, if that makes sense. The housing element update, we launched our housing element update for Placer County, and that'll be the 2021 through 2029 process. And we've contracted with Public Works, Inc. to assist in the process of updating our housing element as required under state law. And then still working on trying to find a location for supportive housing efforts. We had identified a house in the Tahoe City area to purchase for HHS. Unfortunately, it was right near the elementary school, and it didn't seem to make as much sense as possibly looking for a site over in the Kings Beach area where the services are provided more directly to individuals. So we're continuing to work on that. We have funds set aside and hope to secure that. Hopefully when the real estate market opens up again, we'll be able to move on that. And then just related to COVID, I wanted to report, we are working with a local Tahoe hotel provider to house COVID-19 patients who may not be able to quarantine well from their families, either lacking shelter or in very confined trailers with other family members. They don't need to be in the hospital taking up space there. We needed to find them a spot, and we had a local hotel operator who was willing to do that. So we're thankful and working with Nevada County to provide it at that one location. And we've also expanded our services through the Emergency Warming Center in Truckee, working with our regional partners to help provide that at Veterans Hall Tuesday through Saturday. So happy to answer questions, but I'm sure our staff may have other updates if any of you want to chime in while we've got the mic. Lindsay or Jennifer or Emily, did I miss anything?
I think you covered it all from what I can think of, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Cindy. So we're going to jump back to Jeff now that I think he is back on. Jeff, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I apologize. I hope it won't go out again. I'll talk fast as I always do. A couple more things. Steal a little bit of Shauna's thunder, but she'll be back with you next time. A building permit will be issued for Coldstream Commons, 48 low-income units. I don't know when they will start. I know they're still looking for a little more financing. And on the programmatic area, which is what Shauna would have talked about, first, we've got a whole new webpage and a whole new look. So check it out under Housing, Town of Truckee. Secondly, the short-term rental conversion or conversation project, which we have contracted with Host Compliance, is kind of on hold. The COVID kind of put that one on hold. Didn't seem to make sense to try to have a lot of focus groups and that kind of thing and do it all remotely. So we'll get back to that in a while. Third, the ADU incentives program is up and running and fully funded and in place. So build your ADUs, folks. We're ready to go. We're not seeing a lot of action right now, but it's ready. Fourth, the rental conversion project, if you will, that is the notion of taking some short-term rentals and giving some incentives to turn them into full year rentals, long-term rentals, is underway. Well, I shouldn't say it that way. We are still investigating with landing different approaches and amounts of dollars and things, but that one will be rolling out. We're working on it. Similarly, a rental assistance program to renters themselves. We are working on that one both, but COVID has kind of gotten in the way of that because we're also trying to figure that out from a COVID point of view, because it may be more immediate needs for rental assistance rather than the longer term needs for rental assistance. And then finally, the town site. We own a piece of property, as many people know, up in the old Riverview Courtyard, part of which has been earmarked for the Rec and Park District's moving of their corporation yard in the regional park, but about a third of which, or a little more than a third of which, is earmarked for some form of affordable or workforce housing, and we will be moving forward with that. Many of our longer term housing projects or programs that cost a lot of money, though, I will say we're putting not the brakes on, but the yellow light on at the moment because our budget has been decimated. This goes more in the COVID conversation, but between the loss of transit occupancy tax and the loss of sales tax, because the governor put off sales tax for 12 months for people if they want to do it, we're doing some budget projections that are pretty dire. And it also includes, we expect in less than a year's time to be hit dramatically with CalPERS costs, since they lost over $70 billion in the marketplace this last month. So anyway, we're taking a very careful approach to make sure that long-term essential services aren't going to suffer before we spend new money. But we will be powering ahead with all those housing programs, perhaps a little bit scaled down. So thank you for letting me talk.
Thanks, Jeff. Let's move over to Richard Anderson, Nevada County.
Thank you, Emily. Cindy has already touched upon the collaborative efforts between Nevada County and Placer County with regard to housing the homeless in our region. With regard to other projects, Nevada County has approved a seniors affordable project in Penn Valley on the west side. Other than that, there's not much happening. There's really no updates beyond what we had at our last meeting with the Mountain Housing Council. In essence, the current policies, programs are still underway or still in effect. I will note that our community development agency is open, and we are processing permits and performing inspections as necessary. So those contractors who are still at work are not being held up on this side, and that basically is it. So if anyone has any questions, either via chat or Zoom, please speak up.
Thank you very much, Richard. Heidi, did you want to give a Martis Fund update? Heidi, you there?
Sorry, guys. In terms of the COVID-19 update, the Martis Fund board has approved $40,000 to Sierra Community House and the Emergency Warming Center to support rental assistance and emergency shelter. So we're pretty excited about that. So I'm keeping the board in the loop with all the community needs that are happening. Can I go ahead and give other updates, or do you want to wait for those updates later?
Let's stick to the housing related updates, and then COVID updates we'll be touching upon in a few minutes.
Okay.
Is that cool?
Yep.
Cool.
Thanks.
Karen, TRPA. Karen, are you there? All right, we'll wait on Karen.
Sorry.
Now I figured out.
Okay. Hi, Karen.
Hi. Thanks. So, as I think I brought up at the last Mountain Housing Council meeting, we brought some conceptual policy changes related to accessory dwelling units to our local government and housing committee for changes that would be region-wide. And so we got some, good input on that and positive feedback from the local government and housing committee. So we're looking at coming back hopefully by June with all the, changes that we're putting in place with our online meetings and stuff for ADUs, and then looking at other housing initiatives. So starting to get back to that in June. And then in the meantime, we are amending on the South Shore one of the area plans to allow for hopefully a 77 unit affordable housing project to go in the Ski Run Pioneer area.
That's awesome, Karen. Thank you for sharing. Anything else you want to share with us, Karen?
Nope, that's it for now.
All good. Okay, awesome. Thanks. Really quick, Shauna, are you on the line now? All right, maybe not yet. I think she's coming on soon, though, so I might have Shauna jump in and just fill in on anything that that Jeff had already shared with us. Steve, do you want to give an update from Sierra Business Council?
Yeah, just a quick update on non-government relations related things. We continue to work with 4 housing developers in the region through our technical assistance expansion program from the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development to provide technical assistance to advance housing projects. And just a reminder to all of your clients that we can work with them on public outreach, on planning, and on trying to increase access to funding for those individual projects. So glad to see that at least 3 of the 4 people that we were talking to previously are still planning on moving forward with their projects. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Steve. Let's see, any other partners want to provide any housing related updates? Okay, if we don't have anybody now, Stacy, I'll give it back to you and let you move forward with the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. Okay, so moving on. This is officially the last meeting of Mountain Housing Council 1.0. And so if you know how to use the clapping applaud in your Zoom, I think it's time for a round of applause for all the hard work that you guys have put into accelerating housing solutions for our region. 3 years ago, when we launched this, we had just completed the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. It was an unprecedented report that crossed jurisdictional boundaries. It seems quite natural now that we see these collaborations taking place among all these partners. But I assure you, 3 years ago, people were describing it as silos. People were saying that there wasn't a housing crisis, that this was about market and demand. And today we celebrate the fact that maybe you already were focused on housing and now more people know about it. Or maybe your institution was just beginning to feel the pinch because your employees weren't able to find stable housing here, and you suddenly knew that that was part of the success of your business model. Whatever the reason was that your board and you chose to spend time giving on a quarterly basis 3 hours of your busy schedule to focus on this conversation, I just want to take a moment and applaud you and this region for making that happen. So thank you. So on the final deliveries related to 1.0, as promised, we will create a final placemat to memorialize where we are to date. We have been hard at work maintaining a website and making it much more user-friendly. As you might recall, the first 2.5 years of our work was in a nice website, but not exactly user-friendly, much more focused on our policy stakeholders to get what they needed out of it. As both Placer and the town started talking about sustainable funding streams and the need to bring more dollars to the table, we realized that there was going to be an ask at the community level to support housing for this region. And so we knew our responsibility was to really create some tools and a website, digital content that would make it easy for people to really understand not only the problem and nuances around our housing crisis, but the places where they could go to engage in the conversation. And so we have been focused on finalizing that content. I still have hope to create something that is almost like a newspaper insert or a digital version of something like that, that really tells the story of how Mountain Housing Council came together and highlights our partners' efforts and the work that you guys have been doing. And so stay tuned on that, and you will also see a final partner report, as you have twice a year, that recaps all of the fine work and deliverables for you to share with your board and hopefully feel really good about the work that has taken place. I've had some conversations, and I just wanted a chance to open this up for some feedback and direction. And it's only been one person, but that person I think is somebody who might be just very insightful and intuitive about community perspective. And I just want to share that this individual was questioning the numbers related to units that have been either started, opened up, or in the pipeline. And so I brought that kind of challenge to Shauna to ask, do we feel like we, as Mountain Housing Council, are on solid ground with these actual numbers that are being reported? I think in the beginning, there was not one place where it was getting aggregated. And we were also encouraged to show the nuance that it doesn't necessarily mean that Mountain Housing Council built those, to show the nuance that some of these projects have been in the pipeline for years before Mountain Housing Council came together. But at the same time, we recognize that together this region didn't let them slip through the cracks. And so to be able to articulate, where these units are in progress, and acknowledge that, again, while this Mountain Housing Council claims victory on these units, it isn't necessarily because this group of people came together and are actually building it. And so these numbers are put together by our jurisdictions and in consultation with all of our partners. And sorry, I was having a dog situation. I guess I can give you the example of the Rail Yard Artist Lofts, which TTCF has been closely involved with for 4 years. That goes back well over a decade in its vision. And it was the very first Mountain Housing Council meeting that Alexis implored the Mountain Housing Council to not lose sight of this opportunity to have 76 units downtown Truckee. They had just lost, I think, their second round of state tax credits. And if I'm correct, there was at least 4 go rounds on tax credits. So these things take time, and not all of this is in our control. And there are leaders that were in place a decade ago that were bearing the burden of pushing this over the finish line. I think Sierra Business Council was involved in getting that first grant from the Community Resource something or other grant. I'm sorry, I don't have it right. But I think what is on the table, and I would like any discussion, is if there's any question to what we are showing as the units that have been able to move forward during our time, because as we all said in that first meeting, you know, we defined the outcomes that we wanted to measure in that dashboard every quarter. And the first one that you stated was 300 new units over 3 years. And we were pulling a number out of the air, just trying to see how to even measure progress on a collection of institutions like us. And so I think I'm just going to pause here, and maybe you can, in the chat box, say that you have a comment or some insights, because what I want to make sure is when we create that final dashboard, that is the memorializing of our work for this first 3-year initiative, that we all feel like we're on firm ground with what we call success. I want to make sure that when you're out in the community talking about why your organization is funding or participating with Mountain Housing Council, that you feel like these are true numbers that we can claim success on from these activities. So I'm going to stop there and ask Emily, is anybody showing up on the chat to comment on this? And comments can be nuances. Go ahead, Emily, sorry.
I'm not seeing any comments yet. If anybody wants to step forward and unmute and speak, you're welcome to.
Okay. Okay. I wish we were all in a room together because I could see your faces, but the fact that you're not coming forward, I'm taking that as you feel comfortable and confident with the way that the Mountain Housing Council team is representing units. I feel like we're at a wedding and it's like, is there anybody out there who doesn't think that this should happen?
Steve, do you want to say something?
Forever hold your peace.
This is Steve Frisch. I just want to say, yeah, I understand the point that everyone individually, through a variety of different projects and a variety of different efforts, has advanced each one of these projects that we're listing as an accomplishment. But I don't want us to underplay the importance of the collaboration between everyone in the group and the message that sends about the willingness of this community to step forward and say yes to affordable and achievable housing. Because the real value in the long run, in my mind, of the Mountain Housing Council is not just the projects it advances, but the message it sends to everyone in the community and everyone in the development community that we're ready and we're open and we want to work with you. And that is a significant collective accomplishment that these individual projects really represent. And, you know, I think that's a very important thing. I think reporting results this way is entirely appropriate.
Steve, any others? And don't feel like if you need to be the contrarian, that's okay. It's a safe place. I'd rather us talk it out here. If you question these numbers, then, you know, out in the community, kind of questioning the efficacy of Mountain Housing Council. Because I feel like we should always know our blind spots.
Yeah.
This is Jeff Lux. Sorry. I'm not going to be a contrarian, though I think I have been a time or two on these numbers. I actually think it's great. I am 100% supportive or agree with Steve that you know, all of us celebrating is far bigger than any given project, and I'm totally supportive. I like the fact they're reported. I think the trick, and I think this is just a super challenge for Stacy and you and your staff, has just been keeping track of all the moving parts and keeping it up to date. You know, we're looking at this slide, for example, and the word local deed restricted doesn't come on the Coburn one, and so it will confuse people. Even that might confuse people, but tiny little nuances like that make people say, oh, you didn't get the detail right. Or the fact that Coldstream, now called Coldstream Commons, actually isn't under construction, and probably may not be this summer, and people go, oh, you took credit for something that didn't get built. So I just think it's an incredible challenge, and I applaud you guys for doing your best to keep up with all the jurisdictions and all the data that comes pouring in and trying to then collate it and make it look great, which it does on the placemat. which by the way, I have now stolen at least twice. So thank you very much for that brilliant idea, Shauna and Stacy and Emily. Anyway, so I'm totally supportive. I just think devil's in the details, because I think people do get to the details. You know, for example, I'll give you the example. A lot of people have criticized Coburn Crossing. They've said, yeah, that's not really it's market rate. It's too expensive. You know, we've heard some of the negatives. You know, on the other hand, it was an experiment, and I think a good one, and we should celebrate it. But we have to be really precise when we describe what it is and what it isn't, because a lot of the community still believes Coburn is an affordable project for low-income housing or something, which of course it never was. So anyway, I totally applaud, totally am in favor, and I just think we have to keep making sure that whenever the details get publicized, you know, they're vetted as best you can. And you guys have done a great job with that.
Thank you, Jeff. And I will just piggyback on to the reason you're not seeing a dashboard this quarter is our hesitation to get in front of all of our partners who normally would freshen those up for us on a quarterly basis. And it is a little bit of a footnote for myself and Scott's team who manages the website. I just think that people want to go and see the projects. They want to see things getting built. They want to see a visual. They want to see number of units. They want to understand those nuances. So I think in 2.0, the project tracking piece might take a bigger focus. And now that we have a Shauna in place and so many, you know, Emily in place, we have the team to be able to, as a regional collective, start to get that precision that you're talking about, Jeff. So I think that's really good input. Who else?
I want to make a comment really quick. Shauna just mentioned in the chat that the numbers that we're looking at come from staff at both Placer and Town each quarter. So Shauna and I go to Yumi and Shauna Purvines and Emily Setzer and those teams and ask for them to update these lists, and the amount of work they do to help us keep these as updated as possible is really amazing. I mean, we go to these ladies at the 12th hour, and you're always responsive and helping us with these numbers, so that's appreciated, and they are playing a big part in making sure these numbers are correct.
Yeah, and this is Shauna. Hi.
Good morning,
everyone.
Good morning. Shauna.
I've been enjoying being a participant, so thank you, everyone. So I think another really interesting nuance to this would be the tools that manifested these housing. So, as part of Mountain Housing Council's role in education, each of these projects came forward based on a different policy. And I don't think people understand sort of the difference between affordable housing versus a workforce housing or inclusionary. I mean, a lot of these projects like the grocery outlet or Pioneer are results of the inclusionary housing policy versus Coldstream, which is absolutely just an affordable housing, and Rail Yards is an affordable. And so I think there's an opportunity to even categorize based on the results of policies and how they're working to manifest housing. It's not all equal. So good. I think that's just more. And I guess I would just say, because I'm very intimate with this list, approved and under construction, yes, it's I think adding in sort of what the definitions of those are, because grading, for example, we count as under construction, but that's the nuance of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I do think the community appreciates this. And if you go to the website, there's a lot more detail on these projects. And we always thought we would put them sort of on the rainbow of the achievable local housing to see where they all fit as well in the future.
Perfect. Thank you, Shauna. Appreciate you jumping in on that. Okay. Any other questions about the deliverables around units? I think I feel better putting those numbers out there and making sure that we as a council all feel confident about it. Okay, so with that, moving on to 2.0, it's hard to believe we are here. Wow, this has been quite a journey in the process, and I will say that you have all been quite engaged in that journey, and you probably are actually sick of talking about the journey of 2.0 because it's been since last summer that we kicked off kind of a listening tour with each of our partners to see where is this 1.0 landing. And I'll never forget Rick Stevens saying, you can't stop Mountain Housing Council without knowing what's next. And so we've really worked hard to think about not only what's next, but what is the role of this group in what's next, to not assume that Mountain Housing Council is what's next. And we can already see new capacities being built throughout our region from the strength of both Placer and town. Talk about building some muscle. And yes, they had the housing element and they had to already be focused on this stuff, but I will tell you the focus that they have put into this in the last 2 years is such a big part of our success. Steve and his team at Sierra Business Council with a state policy agenda, the first time our entire region shows up for something in Sacramento, has just been fantastic in the ability to leverage each other's lobbyists in the process. And then our business community. Yes, you've had inclusionary, you've had these responsibilities to your employees in the past, but I really believe that over the last 3 years, you guys have felt more partnerships showing up to help you think through those things, and more of an awareness among our other partners to help guide some of those decisions that you have to make or find the resources. So with the next entity discussions, we then hired a consultants housing workshop to prepare a report. We began getting feedback in June on that report. We listened to all of our different partners. We convened you in groups related to stakeholders. And coming out of this, the summer months, we presented you with 3 different models of how to move forward. You guided our decision around a model of a 2.0 with a concept of a hub. During the due diligence, we couldn't quite figure out how to get to that hub without first having a regional action plan that became the implementation or work plan for something like a hub. So we dropped it from our ask, and we went out with the partners in mid-December with an ask that included a memo, kind of letter from me, and a PowerPoint presentation, because we had hoped that maybe in the 2.0 version of Mountain Housing Council, it wouldn't be such a heavy lift on TTCF to go out and recruit renewals. And so, and for some of them, we said, absolutely, we can show up to your board and present. And so we've had, instead of 30 presentations to regional organizations, which was the 1.0 lift for fundraising, I think I've actually only been to like 3 or 4 presentations for these renewal processes. And so I thank you for the partners really carrying forward the asks to your organizations. And what I'm about to share on the commitments is a testimony to the belief of the work thus far. And so finally, what we're looking at is indeed a relaunch into 2.0 in July, and it just matches us better than an April 1st start date as we did prior years, because now it's aligned with some of our fiscal years as well. So with that, we have heard from the vast majority of you. We have many community partners who have come over. I'm already seeing that we should have moved Martis Fund over to funding partner. They showed up this time around with dollars committed, which we are so grateful for. We have community partners who are at the table bringing their communication platforms and their willingness to access their network and share and amplify the work we're doing. You can see the funding partners that have come to the table, generously willing to support the financial burden of a project like this. And then finally, we have a group of pending. And really, it's not because we get a feeling that they might not be at the table. It's just governance, timing really tends to, take a little bit more time. And so I'm hopeful that in the coming month, these will be confirmed. Town of Truckee has a vote to move forward, staff recommendation to move forward with 2.0 on the 14th. And for the others, we anxiously await. And you'll notice that the school district, airport district, hospital district, and the Tahoe Donner PUD will also vote to represent as a collective on the 15th of April. But I will acknowledge that the airport district, thank goodness, actually came in as a funding partner independently, and so we're grateful for that. So these are the movements of a good partnership. Again, we're so grateful for those of you who were able to move it very quickly, and we can be patient with others. We can be patient around financial situations. We know everything has shifted. Some of you have much different priorities than you did a month ago. And so what we are interested in right now, especially from a TTCF standpoint, is not losing the connection to the institutional partners. And I would say not losing the connection to your boards. Your boards represent a very diverse stakeholder group of our community that no one of our institutions can actually access, including TTCF. And so by nature of the way we've designed this to be the top leaders of every institution, the decision makers, so we don't have to wait for process and the layers to get to the decision makers typically has been one of the successes we've had. And the involvement of the elected board members brings us a level of access to a broader community that can not only help adopt policy recommendations that come out of Mountain Housing Council, because you've got a Rick Stevens sitting at the table and willing to go to their board and ask for policy decisions, but you also have somebody who's willing to talk in the community about the things like we just had that conversation. How do we measure success? Can we really claim that many units? And so the more of those electeds and key top staff members as we move forward really reflects the success of this effort. And we know that some of you don't have that. This isn't to shine a light on that. We understand operationally housing is not everybody's main focus and mission, but we ask that from time to time you bring those individuals into these meetings so that they have a window into it and they're part of the broader community aware of what we're doing. So on a work plan standpoint, what we have is our continuation of the ongoing 1.0 work, quarterly facilitation and reporting, public outreach and education, coordination at a statewide policy level, and supporting of our collaborative partners and all of those smaller collaborations as they need sometimes to be brought together to really think through some of their strategy. What we are adopting based on the ask, and we'll talk a little bit about what the work plan truly looks like in detail. But within your ask packets, we asked for you to consider a 10% increase so that we could have the dollars to commit to this regional action plan. And so the regional action plan will be the bulk of our first year of work together in 2.0. And that will be a regional implementation strategy that will guide all of our key partners and any other new organizations or institutions that come online to the community so that we're all on the same page. And I think Jeff's comment of what was successful about Frishman Hollows 2 was one of them. The developer actually knew what the town was looking for. They understood the zoning, they understood the general plan. So with a regional action plan, one of our goals is to make it easy for people to do the work we need them to do in our community. to really articulate the different goals and objectives around housing in our region. Secondly, new work is to convene the funds within our region that have dollars associated with housing. So in San Francisco, they have a regional accelerator fund. You learned about it when we did our next entity conversation. And what we know right now, where our community is today, is we have different pools of funds that sit around throughout the region that have some dollars either specifically for housing or flexible dollars that can be used for housing. And what we've learned is when you're a developer, you catch wind that there might be some money over here and there might be some money over there. And you start kind of a series of meetings where you're pitching your development. And we think that not only if we bring those funding entities together to hear those projects as a collective, almost like Shark Tank, that we will have better leverage where certain funders can play together and leverage each other's dollars. We know some won't have certain fits for certain projects, but we will also be able to work to streamline some of these processes so that we can align what the outcomes are together. And then finally, the grayed out area is this housing hub. And we believe that there is some kind of new capacity that needs to emerge in the community that is kind of a one-stop shop around actual housing projects. And it might be a collaboration with some of the existing institutional partners who now have new housing capacity. And it might be an incubated program within an existing nonprofit or private sector partner. We are just not quite sure what that looks like yet. And we feel like the work that will be accomplished with the Regional Housing Action Plan will really guide us on its relevance and what it'll take to lift it. And so, or to kind of spin it up or create it. And so again, with the 2-point ask, we dialed that back until we could really kind of prove what that looks like. And we are hopeful that in year 2 and year 3, we will actually be working on something like that. So again, focus on the Regional Housing Action Plan, implementation strategies, continuing to be regionally focused, setting goals and metrics. Secondly, coordinating the housing funds with public, private, and philanthropic dollars, sharing on some of the due diligence. Sometimes it might be commingled dollars, like with the Artist Lofts, it was Martis Fund, Town of Truckee, TTCF, and sometimes it'll be one partner. And then collective and separate governance and focus. And I don't even really know what that means right now. Collective. Oh, I know what it means. It's not one accelerator fund. It's acknowledging that there are independent funds within this region that can all work together, even though they have separate governance structures, separate kind of ties and requirements associated with their fundings. And this is not unlike what TTCF does with our grant making and our scholarship work. We bring and convene those funding partners together to help make decisions of how to best use our resources at a regional level. And then finally, the housing hub. And I think I've covered all of this. We think it's going to be really the implementation arm of that regional action plan. In the ask process, where we were asking everybody to renew and consider their financial commitments, the jurisdictions had an opportunity to come together and talk about, what is the value of Mountain Housing Council to their work. Again, as land use jurisdictions, they are charged at the state level to implement housing elements. And so in a lot of ways, the work that we're asking them to do is already the work that they are doing and that is a part of their work plan. And so the value add of Mountain Housing Council for them needed a little more articulation. And so here I have taken, and I've taken their request for some more detail around what 2.0 looks like, and I've kind of captured what it is that they wanted to see continue, as well as going over with you guys some new recommendations from them for consideration of this council. And I didn't change the ask based on this information, because I didn't feel like it was fair to all the others who are already out there asking their boards for what we had presented in the ask packet with new information. So we kept it as what we had all agreed on at the last quarterly meeting. We kept that ask kind of pure, but it seemed appropriate to bring this to the conversation in 2.0 so that everybody's thinking about, what does 2.0 look like? I mean, the entire world has flipped right now. We're all trying to figure out how to pivot our business models. So a 2.0 work plan should also include what worked from 1.0 and how do we think differently about 2.0. And so this is a good time. And what I would say is I'd love some feedback after I'm done presenting this 2.0 section. And then, as we did in 1.0, with the new partners at the table in the 2.0 version, we hammer out what success looks like. And you guys give me guidance on, and our team on what the outcomes are that we're going to measure on that dashboard. And I don't know if it will be policy stuff. I don't know if it will be 300 units. It might be 1,000 units. I don't know what you are thinking success looks like. But when we do have that list, then TTCF and our team through Mountain Housing Council will build the organization to try and drive us all to those outcomes. And what I want to say also that I left out as I flip back to this really quickly, and I wish, please make a note. Under 2.0, we have this others. There are others in our community that might want to participate in Mountain Housing Council. There might be HOAs beyond Tahoe Donner who want to participate. There might be other public agencies who want to participate. And so right now, in the next couple months, the door is open for us to invite other partners to the table who we think can be partners that can accelerate those housing solutions. And so in our feedback time after this 2.0 section, I would like to hear that. But let's go to what the jurisdictions kind of articulated as a level of detail that they wanted to continue seeing Mountain Housing Council deliver, and some new ideas for us to consider. So first, continue with our communications, manage a website, get newsletters out, ensure that our community has bulletins and announcements to appropriate housing action items that are taking place within their own organizations. And of course, working with press and highlighting the work that's taking place. Regional council meetings, hosting these quarterly meetings, making sure there's an agenda and materials that back it up, facilitating these meetings. I promise I won't always be in this position here. We'll have somebody who's quite adept to both Zoom and real-time meetings, documenting and recording the work. Facilitating Tiger teams, you recall, these are our small working groups. We made it a point to not create subcommittees and to institutionalize structure. We wanted to be nimble. We wanted to say, oh, so we think short-term rentals are the problem here? Great, let's get a Tiger team to go access all the most credible information, engage each other in the conversation with those in the council whose work is most relevant to that conversation, and then create recommendations or at least some kind of memorialization of the conversation so that our community was working from the same grounding of information as we take on different topics. 3 years ago, Shauna and I laughed that so many people think there's a silver bullet to the housing crisis, but in reality, it's a lot of little pieces. And so we committed to taking on what are those elements, what are those little pieces that are playing into this housing crisis. And the body of work that came out of the Tiger teams are those policy recommendations, those white papers, things like that. So continue to do that, document, provide deliverables. And of course, this year, begin with the regional action plan. Host annual housing summit. That is something that we have done. It has been put on hold, partly because of bandwidth related to COVID-19. I think we are still open to having some kind of manifestation of an annual housing summit, but in the past 2 years, designing the agenda, creating the materials, facilitating meetings, documenting, reporting. In addition, they want to see continued coordination of our regional funders. And in this way, for 2.0, really not only kind of putting a framework around it, but tracking and reporting on it so we can see how public, private, and philanthropic dollars are flowing into the developments that are supporting the work that we see that needs to take place. And finally, state advocacy and coordination, and the good work that Sierra Business Council has been taking the lead on for us. New ideas that are on the table that have been suggested by the jurisdictions is taking an active role in attracting capital. In fact, they even asked about TTCF's role in doing that. I think that is to be determined. I don't know if a full-blown fundraising strategy around Mountain Housing Council funding is on the table for TTCF, but it certainly isn't off the table. So using this council to actually get engaged in raising money for local housing. And so to date, other than seeking out state grants by way of Sierra Business Council for the developers or by way of helping be more competitive for tax credits, the council itself has not played a role in actually raising dollars for local housing. Playing more of a role in supporting the public efforts to secure stable funding. So Town of Truckee's tourist accommodation tax increase or Placer County's TBID, mobilizing this council to have advocacy arm to ensure that we can get those sustainable funds, exploring creative financing for projects and help around local soft financing for competitive. So again, playing more of a role around the dollars and what that might look like for 2.0. Regional convening, the only new item suggested was to make it beyond just the region that Mountain Housing Council has been thus far, which is the North Lake Tahoe region, but to include our South Lake partners that are guided by the Prosperity Center in an annual summit that is beyond just this region. So that's on the table. And then some ideas for our white papers and Tiger Team areas of focus. They have suggested that deed restriction programs might be considered, mountain density and design, creative financing models, and inclusionary workforce housing policies. So they've come to the table with some priorities that are on their plates that they could use, I think, some Mountain Housing Council focus and attention on. And then finally, local advocacy. It is a evergreen conversation at Mountain Housing Council, and the jurisdictions actually, which is surprising to me because in the beginning, in the creation of this, it was a few of our jurisdictions that reflected on the Workforce Housing Association of Truckee Tahoe, formerly known as WAT. One of the suggestions of where their funding challenges came into play, among others, so this wouldn't be the only reason, was it eventually became an advocacy arm in which they were mobilizing groups to show up in the public meetings at the council and the counties, and then the next day asked to be in a collaborative space, working together. And I think there must have been some kind of disconnect in what advocacy looked like back then and what the role of the jurisdictions were. So I think this is actually a sign of maybe more sophistication and nuance and in collaboration between our jurisdictions and the needs to do grassroots advocacy. But within their requests for 2.0 is to incubate and help launch a separate local advocacy organization and program. Maybe it is WAT again, I don't know. I have an understanding that WAT is not completely gone. It was dormant last time I had this conversation with Breeze Cross. And so I think that that is honestly on the table for, does 2.0 help another advocacy group come into the forefront? With the budget, what you'll see is pretty much the budget we presented to you last time, with year one having the additional expense of $60,000 for a regional housing action plan. And what we have done is remove more overtly the hub costs. So that gets us to these numbers, which total up $808,000. Currently, we have raised a little over $550,000, which leaves us, and we know that the town of Truckee, at least the staff has recommended to move forward with their commitment of $55,000 a year for a total of $165,000. I think I have that right. And I don't think it is pending the town of Truckee vote. Sorry, it's not pending the tourist accommodation tax. And then that leaves us with $75,000, $250 remaining. And my hope is that this is finding 3 partners who collectively can raise, when you divide it into 3, that's about $25,000 a year that we're short, which doesn't feel monumental. And we could probably find 5 partners willing to come in at $5,000 or whatnot. I feel like we can easily fill that gap, and that I feel like I'm on solid ground telling my board that this thing is viable and it's moving forward. So with that, I get to take a pause and ask, our next steps are to invite other partners to participate, invite partners who are community partners who have the capacity to set aside some dollars to help share the financial burden of this effort, to ask for final commitments by June 1st. So that gives us a good month and a half to go out to other partners and see if they want to participate, and then set the calendar for 2.0. I think one of the successes of 1.0 is we just set our quarterly meetings so that there was never a question and we didn't have to round robin calendars for at least these meetings. And so we'll get busy starting to set that calendar for 2.0. Thank you for indulging me on that hopefully thorough presentation, but I can now take questions, and I'll let Emily facilitate that.
If you have questions, go ahead and just type in the chat box, or if you're not familiar with chat, you're welcome to just unmute and make a comment if you'd like.
My goodness, I would love to hear some kind of comment.
Hi, Stacy. This is Heidi.
Hi, Heidi.
I'll go first. Thanks for the thorough presentation. It was really well done. Will you be sending out your presentation to the groups? We could share that with our boards. And then secondly, will you update the partner funding partner updates as well? Okay, looked like it was maybe not updated thoroughly. So
I apologize. I did acknowledge that Martis Fund was in
totally.
the wrong category.
Totally.
I apologize for that.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, everybody will have all of these materials as we always provide them.
Anyone else have a comment or question?
Just out of my own selfish need, can you give me a thumbs up if you're happy with what was presented? Do you guys just one of these or these? It's really hard to facilitate Zoom.
I'm seeing lots of thumbs up, physical thumbs up in the videos.
Thank you. Thank you.
Stacy, this is Jennifer Merchant, Placer County. I like the idea about going back out to some of the community partners that are not currently engaged with funding right now, but are participating, benefiting from the work of the council, or providing work into or participating in one way or another with the council. So I don't think it hurts to start there, because, you know, those are your obvious next people who are already engaged, and probably easier to convince to participate than going out and finding new money elsewhere. I do also wonder if through the work of the community foundation and fundraising for, you know, donor advised or directed or anything like that, if that would make sense as a piece. So just throw those two things out there as ideas.
Stacy.
I will say, let me just add real quick before Rick. Not only did Martis Fund come over to the funding side, but the North Tahoe PUD did as well. And Sugar Bowl has also committed financial support. And so we are seeing those partners have seen the value. And for some of our nonprofit partners, there's just an understanding that is not expected. And so, you know, if TTCF is writing them a grant and they're turning around and giving it to Mountain Housing Council, that's not a good fit. And so I'm just acknowledging that there's certain community partners that we draw a line on. So yes, Frederick.
Well, that's what my driver's license and passport says. So I am Frederick. Stacy, I'd like to compliment you on your report. I'd also like to compliment you on your commitment way back to the artist lofts, including putting some of TTCF's own endowment into the project, which I think took a lot of guts. And I think that's maybe even 2 years ago. And you've really stuck with it, and you facilitated the Martis Fund's contribution. And so, you know, I think you have done a good job on that. And, you know, occasionally I get frustrated by the lack of progress on things, but things have happened. This may not have been the Mountain Housing Council, but Frischman Hollow 2 is incredible. The town, the Pacific Companies, who I think is absolutely terrific. I attended the Planning Commission hearing where Caleb basically said, we've committed to these units. Even before we had approval, thank goodness it got approved. So kudos to them and to the town and to everything that's going on Frischman Hollow 2. And so the council doesn't build anything, but over 3 years, you've brought awareness that didn't exist before. And that's why the airport district re-upped in February, and plus the 10%. So we support you. Keep on it. Thank you. Thumbs up.
Stacy, this is Stephanie. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. Are you suggesting that if the TOT passes, that money would be added to the Mountain Housing Council budget to manage? Wasn't sure that's the way I read it.
Not at all. Not at all. And that's why, let me go back to that screen, why it looks a little, yes. So what it should have said here, the 165, it shouldn't have said TOT vote. It should have said Town of Truckee vote, because it appears, as we know, there's a question about tourist occupancy tax increase in the Town of Truckee. And that is not what we're talking about here. Town of Truckee just has had some challenges putting on the agenda Mountain Housing Council 2.0 renewal. And on the 14th, they will be making that decision. And so pending that decision, if that goes forward, then all that remains in our fundraising effort to date would be about, 75,250. Is that clear, Stephanie?
No. So you're suggesting that if it does pass, it's utilized by Mountain Housing Council? I'm not quite reading what you're saying.
We're not. So I hope we're very clear. This has nothing to do with the tourist occupancy tax.
Hey, Stacy,
Yes, Jeff.
This is Jeff. Sorry, I lost you all for 25 minutes, so I'm sure you had a great time. Stephanie and Stacy, yeah, Stacy's absolutely right. Stephanie, the TOT just means it's a vote of the town council for $55,000 of general fund money per year. It's virtually identical to what we've been contributing the last 3 years. Has nothing to do with the transit occupancy tax issue, the committee that you were on, all of that. They're completely separate. I'll talk about the transit occupancy tax and where we are, which I think you actually know, Stephanie, better than anyone, but they're completely separate. So it's really a decision that we could have done 2 council meetings ago, but because of COVID-19, we couldn't get it on, and we're getting it on Tuesday night.
Okay, I see what I see what you're saying about this line item there. Okay, thank you. That's much clearer.
Stacy, this is Steve. Could you please explain what happened to the concept of the hub and why it's not included at this point?
So the concept of the hub came out of some really robust conversations last summer. I would even say our Martis Fund partners really helped shape thinking through what an implementation entity would look like. If Shauna was in this role, she would be saying she just can vision a physical space where a developer could walk in and understand the processes related to how to build housing in this region that this community needs. And so a one-stop shop, if you will, where you could navigate all of the different processes and fees, and you would actually have an advocate at the hub level who could walk you through and help kind of translate and articulate back to the community. That piece, we felt like collectively, when we were looking at the 3 different models that were presented in September, was going to be outside of Mountain Housing Council's kind of structure, that it needed to have a level of independence in its governance, but it needed to tie back to a regional plan that this group all agreed to. And so that the development that hub was helping to access not only the processes and expertise of that hub, but potentially the housing funds that are here in this region, that those projects were actually aligned with the work that the Mountain Housing Council was doing. And so what we decided to do was push pause on the hub concept because people were kind of not quite understanding the separate governance, piloting it underneath an existing nonprofit. We were talking about maybe an RFP. We thought we could raise another $200,000 a year to launch it. And I think partners were a little bit confused about the steep price tag on the full ask of Mountain Housing Council 2.0 with the hub on top of it. And so what became really clear that everybody, and we presented this, by the way, at the last Mountain Housing Council meeting. So we've had this conversation. What we decided was we would hit pause on the hub, and for the first year, focus on the regional action plan so that we all could sign off on something that from that point on could be the implementation strategy for the region. And at that point, within the process of the regional action plan, we could identify existing capacities, or in other terms, organizations that have either the resident experts like the Shauna Purvines of Placer, or the Shauna Dohertys of the town, or the Emily Vitases of the JPA, we need to look at what is being built, this existing infrastructure now, and we need to take that into context and see how that hub manifests. But the idea would be, once we all sign off on a regional action plan, we then commission a hub, or we figure out how to stand up a hub whose entire work plan is the regional action plan, and they are dedicated to waking up every day and driving that implementation agenda for this region. And the good news is now the hub has the blessing of the Mountain Housing Council. Any development or resources that are coming into play line up within that regional action plan. And by the way, the hub becomes the sniff test for a lot of these projects and developers, so that all of these different partners aren't having independent meetings with different developers and trying to cobble together the right resources and alignment, but instead it goes through the hub where there's a bit of a checklist. Yep, you fit this. Yep, you're focused on that. And from that, we have recommendations from the hub to mobilize these additional financial resources, which, as we've learned from our artist lofts and we've learned from these other projects, it takes a lot of us working together to attract the right resources and creative financing to pull these things off. So we need to be thoughtful and strategic about when we come together and align those. So that's what happened to the hub. And I'm going to stop and see, did I answer your question, Steve?
Sort of, but I want to have a continuing conversation about how our deployment of our more than $70,000 a year in tape resources builds into the hub concept, which we have already been working on planning on how the two of them could eventually combine so that this is more efficient. But we can have that conversation offline.
Steve, I think that that might be the right Tiger team, because I think there are other partners at the table here who also feel there are resources that could make that hub happen sooner than later and possibly simultaneously with the regional action plan. So I welcome that. And I welcome that Sierra Business Council has resources to bring to bear to make that happen. And so I would suggest if we wanted to convene those conversations together, if individuals on this call would like to be part of, I don't want to formalize a Tiger team right now. It's not kind of what we have the capacity to do, but I can certainly host a conversation that expands it so that we go into 2.0 knowing a little bit more of what resources are already available to think through that hub piece. And Stephen, we just didn't have consensus around the hub, but we had consensus around 2.0. And so that's why we're kind of where we are at this very moment. And I don't think consensus around the hub will take long, but there is some validating that still needs to take place to make sure. So that's it.
Okay.
And I'm open if you have more feedback in this conversation.
No, I think we can have that conversation separately and see if there's
Sounds
a need
good.
for an outside conversation.
Sounds good. If others feel strongly about resources on that one and available resources or strategy vision, please just tap me, let me know so that I can start putting together what that looks like. Okay. With that, any other comments, thoughts, 2.0? Anybody want to recommend partners that are missing from this that need to be approached? Okay. If it comes to mind in the middle of the night or while you're walking your dog, just reach out and let me know. All right, moving on, I would like to invite Mr. Frisch to give us an update on the Advocacy Tiger team.
Actually, I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Benesy, who has
Fantastic.
this.
Brittany.
Yeah, hi everyone. So to give a kind of high level update of where we're at with Tiger Team priorities and the current status of the state, As I'm sure many of you have heard, the legislature is currently suspended, set to reconvene on May 4th, following an original suspension date, or reconvening date of April 13th. There's a lot of uncertainty over what's going to happen with that condensed timeline, which continues. It's unclear what percentage of bills that were introduced in January are going to have to be culled. But the legislature is starting to have those conversations about prioritizing bills. Things are moving really quickly. Just last night, the Senate passed Senate Resolution 86, which will allow them to meet next week on a subcommittee on a COVID-19 response. And with that passing, we think that that electronic meetings of other subcommittees will begin ahead of the reconvening on May 4th as well. Which brings us to the budget process, as I'm sure is not surprising with the extension of the tax deadline to July 15th. There's a lot of overall uncertainty over what the state budget is going to be. The Department of Finance has warned agencies to expect no new appropriations to programs that may have been new and included in the governor's January budget proposal. We're assuming that the 2019-20 budget and service levels are what are going to be the base budget at best. The only new exception to no new programs, which you see down there on the priorities, are addressing COVID-19, wildfire, and homelessness. GGRF and other special fund appropriations are likely not going to be discussed until after the base budget is finalized. There's a possibility of an August revise where we might see some of those programs highlighted. In terms of what SBC has been tracking up until the current crisis, we were focusing largely around high hazard zone residential property insurance bills, a CEQA exemption bill that was moving through the Senate, impact fees. A big thank you to Emily for shouting those out after our Tiger Team meeting. I wanted to confirm that we have been tracking those as well. The reality is that as we understand what the new legislature's priorities are, we're probably going to have to update our policy platform document, and we'll keep the Tiger Team and the group apprised as those updates are made and get consensus there. Unfortunately, I think right now there's just going to be limited opportunities in the near future for affordable and achievable housing legislation, but these ideas are definitely not going anywhere. They just might have a pin put in them for the time being, and it's possible that there's going to be a special fall session where we might see some of these ideas picked back up. In terms of the overall long-term expectations, I'm going to hand it back over to Steve.
Great, thanks, Brittany. We have been tracking a lot of federal action on these issues, including it being involved in a partnership with Smart Growth America and the Brookings Institute and the Partnership for Strong Communities for an inclusion of a federal housing component in whatever is proposed as Stimulus 4.0. As many of you know, Stimulus 3.0 had a small amount of funding for housing in it that is getting block granted to states, and that's mostly for supportive housing and for community development block grant programs. The main target of the 4.0 that we're working on is a proposed tripling of the access to low-income housing tax credits. Currently, the federal tax credit is roughly $9 billion a year, and the proposal that we're working on is to expand that during the recession to $18 billion a year and to create a federal backstop from the Fed in order to maintain the value of those low-income housing tax credits so that they become or they continue to be an attractive investment mechanism. So I'm not sure how successful that is. I don't think a tripling is realistic, but I think a doubling and a backstop is realistic in 4.0. And if that was the case, it might mean a doubling of low-income housing tax credits available at the California state level, which would mean, I think, a good infusion of capital for affordable and mixed-use housing. So that's something that we've been focusing on. And then the other thing we've been focusing on the state level is this issue of direct support for local governments. Jeff was quite, I think, calm in his description of the impact of a dramatic loss of sales tax and transient occupancy tax on local governments in our region. The reality is the region is heavily dependent upon TOT and sales tax revenue, and many of those sales tax revenues are going to see a precipitous decline, which is going to take a bite out of the capacity of local government to focus on these issues. That coupled with the hit that is there for CalPERS. So this coalition is also proposing a tripling of the proposed direct aid to local governments and a specific pot of funding for small local governments. That is cities below 500,000 people, which is what was included in the first round, and counties below 500,000 residents as well. So the current stimulus package did not include aid to smaller local governments, and we're proposing that get included in Stimulus 4.0. So I do think we really need to kind of monitor what is happening on the state and federal level very closely. We're going to need to adjust our policy platform. I do think that there will be opportunities in the subsequent special sessions of the California State Legislature to drop in on specific pieces of legislation opportunistically. And as Brittany mentioned, we are hearing that there could be not just an expanded session in July and August, but also potentially a special session of the legislature in the fall to try to pick up some of these things that they weren't able to address due to the recent shutdown and the need to focus on the budget as soon as they come back in. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions.
Can I make a comment, maybe?
Sure.
Thanks, Steve. Jennifer Merchant here. So I just, regarding the stimulus packages, I think that, if the money is going to get set aside, I certainly want to make sure that smaller local governments get a piece of that pie. But one concern that I have is a lot of this money that the state is using for stimulus or for specific programs are actually coming out of local government coffers on the other side. So I just want, when we're doing advocating for those things, certainly at the state level, may have relationship with federal stimulus as well, that we're doing so by looking at the broadest, the broadest view of it, so that we're sure that while we may be getting something on one side, we're not losing it on the other. That's something that our office has been tracking through at least some of the governor's comments, and a little bit of concern about where that money is coming from. And if
Jennifer, I think that's
small
a really
governments and getting allocated only to larger ones, that's the biggest concern.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jennifer. And part of our motivation in focusing on a pot of funding in the federal stimulus for small and local governments is that would be used by the state to backstop the sales tax that was not, or that was deferred in its collection and distribution back to local governments. So we have to find a fix to that problem, because it will really exacerbate the kind of local government capacity and budget problems if we don't. So we're totally down with you on that one. Other comments or questions? Okay.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve and Brittany. Thank you for keeping us connected to those bigger forces in Sacramento and helping bring our region to the table in so many of these important conversations. Okay, transitioning to the tail end of our meeting, I felt like having this meeting amidst what is just the strangest crisis I think we've ever faced, in the sense of its kind of slow motion burn here. There's been a lot of activity at the local level to coordinate resources and to respond to the growing need. And it just felt right for the Mountain Housing Council to take a moment and hear from each other about how we're being impacted, and primarily how some of our institutions are stepping forward and responding in the ways that are aligned with our missions. And so I'm going to transition us now into that conversation. But before I do, I just want to make sure there's no other kind of housing focused, mountain housing related 2.0, state policy agenda 1.0, any of that you might have a question or a comment about before we move on.
Hi, Stacy. Tom Murphy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was curious. Have we identified any housing trusts or other entities that could fill the void of a hub concept that may not be coming to fruition, that could be utilized in the region for like land bank donations or perhaps funding donations, for projects coming forward, if the Mountain Housing Council is not going to be that hub?
I do think that is the work to be done. I do think that the regional action plan is going to drive a lot of those, what is the best implementation strategy. And I'm hopeful that, that hub, I don't know if that's intended to be a trust. And I think that's where, Tom, a lot of the confusion came as we were trying to move through the end of 1.0. Think about if this regional collaboration is still relevant or if it needs to step aside. Many of the partners felt like this collaboration is, if anyone, is going to be the one to figure out, do we put all of our energy and focus into a trust? Do we put it into some other type of entity? Do we put it into some group of entities? And so I wish I had an easy answer. I'm quite aware of the trust model. We did discuss with our partners over a couple meetings that even the Truckee Donner Land Trust has offered to play a role in that way if we felt like suddenly there was land that needed to be donated or housing that we could raise money for and purchase. So it is very much at the forefront of our mind, but from a readiness standpoint, it was clear that the region wasn't ready to manifest a whole new organization just yet. And what I'm hopeful is that the regional action plan will give us guidance and validate some of those models for us to move forward with. Does that answer your question?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, it does. I can appreciate that. And to Steve's earlier point, I would like to participate in trying to move something forward in that regard, because I think it's a key need.
Okay, so again, others who feel strongly about that part of the conversation, go ahead and start sending myself or Emily that interest, and I'll see how I can keep this conversation moving as we transition from 1.0 to 2.0. Okay, any others? All right. Moving on, I wanted to just give you an update from the TTCF side of the world with COVID-19. As a community foundation, we're typically known for making grants, working with our nonprofits to help build capacity and strengthen their business model so that they can have the best impact in the community. We also administer hundreds of thousands of dollars of scholarships, of which are currently taking place right now. If you have a senior, you know that the colleges haven't changed their deadlines and that your senior is currently looking for scholarships. So we have Phyllis McCon completely 100% deployed right now in working through over 1,000 applications for scholarships with her community committee. We've got Allison Schwedner, who's on the line, who's the director of the Community Collaborative of Tahoe Truckee, who has really been coordinating with our frontline nonprofits, figuring out how to stabilize them and prepare them for the growing need and scale them. And so we came together very early, and I'm going to share a couple of resources that I think would be helpful. We put together a framework in which we, as the community foundation, could keep an eye on the bigger movements happening as a region. And we put them in 6 buckets: food accessibility, making sure that our community members had access to food; mental health and substance abuse, recognizing that this is going to take a toll on our community members, and making sure that existing services related to these things don't lose their momentum. And so how do you transition those critical therapies that our community needs into a virtual landscape? Shelter and housing, you got a window of that from Allison and Jasmine's update. Essential workforce. There is a frontline group of individuals within this region who need to be standing up a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now. How do we as a community foundation keep an eye on what their needs are and respond accordingly? Senior care, making sure those who are most vulnerable in this crisis have the support mechanisms they need, which includes food. And then finally, census count, and a complete one. We recognize that now more than ever, making sure that our region has a complete count will result in more resources at the state and federal level to respond to exactly these kinds of challenges. So the irony is it's time for the census at a time when we need that count the most. So that framework has really facilitated conversations not only among our local partners, but also with our donors in trying to raise dollars for an emergency response fund, which I will talk about. So we immediately launched an emergency response fund intended to be flexible to ensure that resources can support our community as circumstances change. What the Community Foundation is best at the world at is working with our nonprofits. So the funds that are raised through the Emergency Response Fund will go directly to nonprofits who will then be able to work one-on-one with our community members. In addition to launching the fund, we have a webinar series that we partnered with Sierra Business Council. At this time, they are all recordings. But our first one was focused on what assistance is available for small businesses and nonprofits. We moved into cash flow and scaling operations, which I would recommend for any business, nonprofit or otherwise, and thinking about how to manage your cash flow during these times. We talked about virtual workforce. And finally, we ended also, I would recommend this one, on HR topics during a challenging time. And so that we bundled up and got that out into the world as quickly as possible. And then finally, with our fundraising efforts to date, this Monday we announced $260,000 going to 5 key organizations in this work. Those dollars are both community raised dollars as well as some dollars from the Cats Amsterdam Family Foundation, who has a passion for mental health in the mountains. Those dollars are tied to the CEO of Vail Resorts. And so together, those partners of Vail communities share resources and ideas around that. And so you'll see not only were we able to make a large gift to Sierra Community House, which is now 4 organizations in the past, as Teresa acknowledged, focusing for them on scaling their food operations, helping them purchase a refrigerator truck so they can do distribution, helping them purchase laptops for their team to move virtually. Gateway Mountain Center, who provide services to our most at-risk youth, making sure that they can continue to do that work in a time where many of the youth that they serve are now at home, sometimes in a situation that causes a lot of their problems, not always the most peaceful situation. In fact, I really encourage you to listen to Peter Mayfield's segment on that 101.5 radio show yesterday. It was just the most powerful work that they're doing and listening to how some of our youth are being impacted right now. The Wellness Center of TTUSD to help them expand outreach and support for our local youth, as well as Boys and Girls Club, who are moving to virtual Boys and Girls Club, as well as scaling their food operations and making sure that their families are being served. And finally, Sierra Senior Services to help them scale their food distribution operations and move away from a pickup to the ability to do home delivery. So those are the ways that the Community Foundation has responded. We continue to raise money in this emergency response fund. I'm pleased to report as of today, including that $260,000, we're somewhere in the neighborhood of about $430,000 to date. So we are now starting to think about what round 2 looks like, although I think with our quick dollars out the door to our frontline safety net, we're mobilizing conversations that are more about, what does this long-term impact look like? How do we think creatively and innovatively as a community to pivot in these challenging times? So more to come on that. But again, thank you for allowing me to share that with you. I feel like if you have questions, please let me know. We've got a great team with Allison and Phyllis and Deb Ryan, who we call Professor Good Stuff, on the team, all stewarding our mission right now, as well as our very capable board and volunteer network. So are there any questions?
Stacey, I just have a comment. I just think that's phenomenal, and I applaud all the work that you guys have done. It's incredible.
Thank you. I'm proud to say that I'm part of a network of more than 800 community foundations that are doing this right now in all of their unique communities. And as you know, we have Parasol, we have El Dorado Community Foundation, we have Placer Community Foundation. We are all part of a network that are serving on the ground communities across the country. And I just read an article that almost $500 million has been raised from community foundations across the country. And so I just have to say I'm proud of the mission that I serve, and thank you, Tom, for acknowledging that. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All right, with that, I'm going to let Emily drive. I think there are some other report outs that we would love to hear from partners as it relates to COVID-19.
So, Emily, this is Steve Frisch. If I might start, because I need to leave in just a second.
Perfect. Thanks, Steve.
I just wanted to let you guys know that Sierra Business Council has also been working with both Nevada County and the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation on a countywide fund that would leverage some of the funding that TTCF is raising from all of our good community citizens. It was recently announced that it would be on the board agenda for, I believe, next Tuesday. Richard, I see you're on the phone. I'm not sure when that board meeting is. So that's an opportunity actually to partner with our friends in Western Nevada County and to look at a more regional perspective around this. And then one of the things that we've really been focusing on at our Small Business Development Center and through our SBA process is the point that there's going to be a huge need in the community to provide some assistance in getting businesses restarted. that the amount of funding that's coming from things like the payroll protection plan and others is unlikely to be enough for many of our small businesses that have shut down. So we're looking at creating a 506c micro lending fund for small businesses that would be able to lend tranches of capital between about $5,000 and $20,000 to individual small businesses to assist them in getting reopened, to refill their cooler if they're a restaurant, to refresh their inventory if they've got, spring clothes and they need summer or whatever it is. So we'll be announcing something on that shortly. So, and that's it.
That's really amazing, Steve. Thank you for sharing. Richard Anderson, did you want to contribute?
Emily, thank you. Just to dovetail with what Steve mentioned, I have to recognize the town of Truckee because several weeks ago, the town council gave or allocated, I think, $90,000 for COVID, for community COVID relief purposes. And we saw that, the county saw that and thought, let's do something similar. And that led to the discussions around what do we do, how do we do it. One of our staffers found a model in Berkeley, at Berkeley Community Fund, which the city established for this purpose. And so we've been progressing with that model, and have been working with Stacy, working with Steve and Kristen York. And as I alluded to, or as I mentioned earlier during the introductions, there is no similar community foundation on the west side of Nevada County. So part of the struggle or part of this effort has been to create an organization similar to what we have here in our area to raise monies. I mean, it's not simply to push monies from the county toward important nonprofits and purposes, but it's to also provide a means for the community to donate. And my understanding, and I have not seen our agenda packet yet for Tuesday, but my understanding is that it'll be on Tuesday's agenda. And I think it's a bifurcated system. Given we already have a foundation up here, there'll be a button on the page which will allow folks to donate. For West County or East County, and the East County will go to the foundation, our foundation. West County will go to the Nason Foundation, which is being created down there. And we see it as a wonderful way to leverage the fundraising capabilities of our community foundation to leverage what the town's doing, and frankly to hopefully bring in additional monies from our community for to deal with this important pandemic. That's it, Emily. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you for stepping up to respond so quickly for both Eastern and Western County. Any other report outs? It doesn't just have to be what your organizations are doing, but are there any of our partners that are maybe struggling or have a challenge that you'd like to put out to the council and possibly brainstorm on? Any other comments or thoughts? Looks like Jennifer Merchant would like to do a plaster report out. Jennifer?
Yeah, thank you very much, Emily. I wanted to talk first and foremost about our partnership with stakeholders in our community. We have been having 3 times a week meetings with the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, along with our District 5 Supervisor, Cindy Gustafson, and have worked with them to support or to develop some messaging to our community and with our other special district and other partners. The Resort Association created a Stronger Together campaign. They're doing a lot of videos that build off of that positive messaging, including some work in the Bay Area that while it's a positive foundation, letting people know that, this probably isn't the best place to be at this time, and that they should be staying in their own homes, and that we will be ready to welcome them back as soon as this is over with. So they've done a great job in making those messages positive and not negative anti-business or anti-tourism messages. I will say, even with that, though, we have struggled, just like the town of Truckee and others I've seen in mountain and rural resort communities, to take the community feedback on short-term rentals or second homes. Our public health officer has changed her directive and guidance on some of these points. So it's been hard for us to manage that messaging to also be friendly and welcoming. And but we're doing that in partnership with the Resort Association, and have actually made great strides through that partnership and getting messaging out to our property management companies, others who are renting properties, as well as second homeowners. Our partners with the PUDs sent out a letter that our health officer wrote. It wasn't appreciated by everybody, but I think she's trying to send the message that having a smaller population, given our resources at this time, is important. But those have been some challenging messages for sure. And I just got a report on our short-term rentals, and the number of rentals that were in play last week dropped down to 26 in our region, and we're in the many thousands on a normal day. So I do want to thank the property management companies and the businesses and individual homeowners for really kind of heeding that request from our local government in the state. I do want to point out, too, the Resort Association worked with our staff and led an effort to collect a lot of data. Their website features multiple types of resources, not just business resources, but for those in the community, including public health resources, mental health resources, food, features local businesses that are doing to-go orders. I do want to give a shout out to Brian Nelson with the Pioneer Cocktail Club. I don't know if anybody has driven through Tahoe City lately, but he has completely changed his business model from being a restaurant and bar to using his food providers to have a grocery ordering service. So you can go on their website, order groceries from them. They're actually pretty dang affordable, maybe even cheaper than some of our larger grocery stores, and they'll deliver them to your house. So he's keeping his employees working, and he is keeping people fed in our community for really a reasonable price and without having to leave their home. So I think that we're seeing a lot of people in our business community kind of innovating and stepping out of their normal box to keep their businesses alive. We've seen some great innovation too from Alpenglow, and I'm sure there are many others. Let's see, what else did I want to mention here? Jasmine Bro, I want to give her a shout out, has been working out of Nevada County's and Placer County's Health and Human Services office to ensure that the outreach we are doing is also getting message to our native Spanish speakers. That we've gotten a lot of feedback that we're behind the curve on that. So we've been working with her to connect in with Sierra Community House and other leaders, especially in our Kings Beach community in Placer County, to make sure that those resources are available to people and their language, so that they can, follow along as new directives and orders come out of our office or the state regarding face coverings and that sort of thing, and social distancing, and making sure that people in the Latino community are modeling some of those messages, and it's not just coming from the Placer County health officer, because I think that's more meaningful when they're hearing it from the local residents and not from somebody down in Auburn. Finally, I will say that in addition to our 3 times a week calls with the Resort Association, we're convening a weekly call with special districts, social service organizations, other government organizations, et cetera, including business organizations, to just have a roundtable. It's an opportunity for reporting out from public health, as well as our information about the the progress on hitting COVID and the number of cases. The hospital district participates, our utility districts, our fire districts. Allison has been reporting from the community collaborative. So if anybody wants to participate in that call who is not currently engaged, you can send an email to me. I think all of you on the screen have my email address, and we'll get you added to that list. Appreciate the town of Truckee's participation, Nevada County. It's really kind of an Eastern jurisdiction opportunity to learn about what's going on. And we're talking about maybe expanding that out to try to do some public convening, but we see others in the community like Moonshine Inc. standing up on specific topics they're hearing about too. So I'm happy to participate in that and lead in that. And unless Emily or Lindsay have anything else to add, I think I'll call that enough for me right now.
All right, sounds like we're good on Placer County. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We do have about 10 minutes left until we typically call the meeting at 11 o'clock. Teresa with Seattle Community House, Jeff, Town of Truckee, and Brett Williams with NLTRA have all kind of raised their hands to speak. So if the three of you could keep your reports to about 2 minutes, that would be wonderful. Teresa, do you want to talk with us about what Sierra Community House is focused on?
Sure. I think I pretty much covered it in my introduction, essentially that we are continuing to provide all of the services that we always have, just switching the way that we're doing it a little bit, including food support and helping those who are fleeing violence. What I wanted to just speak to really quickly is that with the expansion of support that we've seen from donors, grantors, many of you, et cetera, we are working to scale our communications in a way that lets people know that we're doing, but does not set up unrealistic expectations. It's something we've always kind of tried to balance in terms of saying we have rental assistance, but making it clear that we're also going to be trying to help people avail themselves of other programs too, because ultimately, even though the funds are bigger, they're still limited. And so trying to make sure that we're helping people to access wage replacement. We're helping people to understand what the eviction protections mean and to communicate with their landlords in a way that is not going to end up with them being evicted or having huge debt 3 months from now. So there's some complexity to that, but really for this group, I just wanted to say, please refer people our way if they're in need. We are kind of scaling up what it is that we're able to provide in terms of direct assistance in addition to the work that we usually do to serve community members.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Teresa. Jeff, Town of Truckee.
Yes, thanks, Emily.
Well, shoot, I think we've lost Jeff again. Hopefully he can join us here in a minute again. Brett Williams. Oh, Jeff, you back?
Yes, sorry. It's
Okay,
just,
cool.
I don't know why it just keeps going in and out. Can you hear it now?
Yep, you're good.
Sorry. Everyone tune in to our April 14th, next Tuesday council meeting. You'll get a whole lot more. That's the place to tune in for both COVID and there are actually two housing items. The Mountain Housing Council 2.0 we talked about is on for council, and an update on where we are in the transit occupancy tax stable housing conversation. It's gotten very complicated, as you might guess, given the tax situation we're in, but that'll be talked about and updated. And everything everybody said, I'll just say that we have turned our entire operation on its head. At least some of us, we do different jobs than we did before. And our three key messages or key new tasks are messaging and communicating in a way we've never done before. We actually have 3 people totally change their job descriptions. Secondly, keeping our essential services going, not just now, but a year from now. And all the time in between. And then finally, the stay-at-home flatten the curve thing, anything we can do to make that happen, either through regulation or enforcement or pushing within the confines of the kind of things Jennifer did say. And lastly, I'll just say that, the partnerships have been incredible. We're all getting tired of Zoom meetings, having 10 or 12 a day, but we put out about $90,000 just literally immediately a couple of weeks ago. We will certainly be putting out additional dollars in some manner for either business or meals or housing. But we're really trying to make sure we do that, one, when we know we have the budget to do it because of our budget problems, and two, that we really understand the key need, where the gaps are, where the federal government's not coming through, where private philanthropy is not coming through, where we don't already have it, and the town's gonna step in there, but we're trying to hesitate. Everyone's trying to tap the treasury right now, and we're trying to say, let's tap it when we know exactly the most important way to recover. Sorry.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, Jeff, what time is the town council meeting tomorrow? 4 or 4:30?
It's 4:30.
4:30.
And
Awesome.
it's a WebEx. It's a WebEx, Cisco WebEx.
Okay, wonderful. I believe it's on the homepage of the Town of Truckee website as well, if anybody wants to join tomorrow. Brett Williams, did you want to give a quick few-minute update?
Yeah, real quickly. Just wanted to clarify something regarding the STRs in Placer County and the low occupancy. Personally, I think this is not really about the enforcement and let's call it the supply side of the equation, whether it be property managers like me or the individual homeowner, but really rather a lack of demand for people to want to come here and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to not have downhill skiing, et cetera. It's similar to, you probably don't need to enforce a lot of restrictions on hotels in Anaheim right now, considering Disneyland is closed. Okay. So I think that's an important clarification to the demand sources or lack thereof on the STR side. And then we don't really know how COVID-19 is going to impact our real estate market, but in my experience, our two most similar situations would be coming out of 9/11 and also coming out of 2008. And my experience in that I thought I'd share with you guys is what we might see will be the person who's a second homeowner who is currently not vacation renting their property. They're going to be contacting people like me and saying, hey, I'd like to make some extra cash out of this. Can I get some more information on short-term renting? A lot of these short-term rental people actually are going to be contacting people like me and saying, hey, I short-term rent to offset some costs, but now cash is a little bit more imperative. What will long-term leasing look like for me? Okay, so that demand, that will spill into the long-term bucket. And then maybe most importantly, if values come down significantly from pre-COVID to post-COVID, what we're going to see are people who were going to list their house for sale in our most popular time in May, June, et cetera. They may choose to punt on that and actually long-term lease the property until equities come back up. So the good news for the town of Truckee and the good news for Nevada County and Placer County is I think the market will adapt here and provide more supply of long-term housing. That's it.
Thank you, Brett. And also on that topic, I'll tell you, Tahoe Landing, as soon as the STR orders were kind of put in place, Tahoe Landing did start to see a pretty quick increase in short-term rental homeowners reaching out and asking about long-term renting opportunities, even just 3 months. But we're starting to try to shift people and their mindsets to looking at that longer-term rental opportunity to help our local workforce as well. So we are already starting to see a change in mindset around short-term renting to long-term renting. So we are at 11 o'clock. I want to shift it back to Stacy. If you do have reports or updates you want to share with the group, share them with me and I will include it in these notes. I'll make sure that we get the notes out quickly to all of you. The notes including the presentation from today, so you'll have a copy of that PowerPoint presentation as well. Stacy, you want to close us up?
That's good. Fantastic. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everybody, for all your hard work and pivoting. And I appreciate Brett's final comments that things are shifting and we have opportunities to advance on from the housing front. And so with that, I just, if I was with you, I'd hug you. I think I'm going to have to change the way that I greet everybody. I'm being tested because I've always been a hugger. And I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate your time and your energy and your focus. And I wish you and everybody you love well. in the coming weeks. I don't know who will be sick, whose children will be sick, whose parents will be sick, but I just want you to know we are a community and we are all in this together. So let us know how we can be of service to you. With that, thank you. Have a great day. Hugs, virtual hugs. Bye, everybody. Take care.
Be well and safe.
Be well.